Story 1. Ex showed up at my door 7 years later with a kid demanding child support. Then my wife came out and everything went downhill fast. Hello Reddit, this is going to be kind of long because there's a lot of context. So, first and foremost, I'll tell you guys a little about my ex-girlfriend. My ex, Cindy, 30F now, 23 when we were together, and I were together for 4 years. We met in college and stayed together throughout. We even got an apartment together once we graduated and lived together for a year before she broke things off with me abruptly and without an explanation. Cindy was 1 year older than me and a senior in college, so I was too shy to go talk to her, and she's the one who had to initiate the relationship. She asked me out. She said, "I love you," first after 6 months of being together, and she is the one who suggested that we move in together after college. She was a wonderful girlfriend. For those who can't tell, this is sarcasm. In every way but one, she was just very insecure. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was because I never really took initiative in the relationship or something similar, but she was just always very insecure and jealous. She'd hate it when I'd speak to other girls, no matter who they were. So, after a couple of fights, I cut off all my friends who happened to be women because Cindy was more important to me than being friends with other women. It wasn't just friends from college who I stopped talking to, but I also stopped speaking to my school friends who'd been friends with me for more than 5 years at that point. I'm back to talking to them because Cindy's not in my life anymore, and my wife's cool with my friends regardless of gender. But back then, I was just friends with my guy friends, and I wasn't even allowed to go out with them to have a boys' night because Cindy believed that it would just be an excuse for us to all go to bars, get wasted, and pick up girls. I didn't think it was fair to me because she'd forbid me from seeing anyone without her because of how insecure she was. But I couldn't see how wrong it all was because I was too in love with her and I felt like she was too. She'd tell me all the time about how much she loved me and said that she couldn't live without me. She couldn't imagine a future without me and whatnot. So, I stayed despite everything because I wanted to marry her and be with her. That's all I wanted. But with time, it became more and more difficult to stay with her since she just kept getting more suspicious and weird about me. By the time we were living together, I couldn't do anything without her breathing down my neck. She'd check my phone all the time, she'd monitor my movements, and if I didn't update her on my location at all times, then she'd threaten to lock me out when I came back home. So, by now you guys have some idea about how toxic our relationship had turned. By the time we broke up, I still somehow found it in me to stay with her, but then surprisingly, she's the one who broke up with me. And it was over something insane because it was just a small misunderstanding that led to our breakup. One day, my sister visited me without announcing her visit, which she usually did to make sure Cindy didn't suspect me and think that maybe I was having other girls over. Cindy wasn't at home when my sister, Lauren, 33F, dropped by. She was at a friend's place because she was allowed to meet her friends and I wasn't allowed to suspect her. Anyhow, Lauren surprised me by dropping in unannounced, and I was so surprised to see her that I didn't even text Cindy to tell her that Lauren had come over, which I would have usually done. We got to talking and we spent around 2 hours together at home, but then all of a sudden, she received a call from her boss and had to leave to go back to work urgently. The thing that caused my breakup was unfortunately the lipstick that Lauren had left behind when she'd taken it out to reapply it before she headed back to work. She was in a rush to leave, so she forgot it on the couch, and it was so small that I didn't notice it either. Then Cindy came back home a little after Lauren left, and she seemed happy until she found the little lipstick. I still remember it as clear as day. She sat on the couch and sprang back up as soon as she sat, then grabbed the lipstick that she'd sat down on, and I instantly knew that I was screwed because there was just no way in hell that she was going to let this one slide. I tried to downplay it and told her the truth instantly. I told her that Lauren had come over to visit during her lunch hours and she'd taken out the lipstick to reapply it because she had to go back to work. I explained that she was rushing to go back home, so she'd forgotten to put it back in her purse. But just as I'd expected, Cindy didn't buy even a word of what I told her, for a couple of reasons. Like I said, she brought up that Lauren usually texts Cindy and me, both in the text group that has the 3 of us, before she comes over. She hadn't done that this time. And secondly, she thought that it was very unlikely that Lauren would take out her lipstick to reapply in our house because my sister wasn't really one for makeup. She was convinced that I'd had another girl over and absolutely flipped out. And when I say flipped out, I don't mean it lightly. She really went psychotic and started screaming at me, cursing at me, and randomly started throwing things to the floor. First, she went for the cushions, then she threw some books to the floor while raging at me, but then it crossed a line when she grabbed the TV remote and threw it right at me. I ducked and managed to avoid it, but I knew that I needed to get the hell out of there, so I ran to our bedroom and locked myself in. I didn't have my phone with me, so I couldn't call anyone for help, and I just had to stay there by myself for like an hour while she went on and on about how I had betrayed her. She was screaming like a banshee outside the room, and I'll say that I was pretty scared. Then finally, the screaming sort of calmed down, and I finally gathered the courage to leave the room and check outside. I noticed that she was gone and had left the door wide open. I didn't try to talk to her or contact her in any way for the next couple of hours because I figured that she had just gone on a walk to clear her head or something. But then when she didn't even come home by midnight, I started to get a little worried and decided that I was going to try and call her. To my surprise, I noticed that the call didn't go through, and after the first couple of tries, I realized that she had blocked me. I tried to text her, but with no luck because I was blocked there as well, and she had also removed me from all her social media accounts. I was paranoid and tried to call her friends, but they didn't answer my calls either, and I guess they had blocked me too. For the next few weeks, I just kept trying to contact her in any way I could, but she just did not answer. After almost a month of trying to track her down, I gave up because I realized that she did not want to be found, not by me at least. I was completely lost without her, and the next few months were really the toughest of my life. I don't know how I got through it all. All I would do was just go to work, come back, miss her, and pretend that things were fine. People tried to convince me that I was better off without her, but I just didn't feel it. I moved out of that apartment after a year. I tried to stay there because I thought that if Cindy ever came back, she would be able to find me if I remained in that apartment. But after I moved out and had a new address, I gave up any hope of reconciling with Cindy. We never got any closure, and that was my biggest disappointment so far. I was pretty depressed and tried not to talk to women after my breakup because I didn't want to feel like I was betraying Cindy. That changed when I met my current wife, Amy, 27F. She was a colleague at work, and she was really sweet to me when I was new, and not just me, but she was sweet to every single person in the office. She was beautiful, intelligent, and had a brilliant personality. So despite my best efforts, I couldn't help but fall for her. Within a few months, I had promised myself that I would never put myself through another relationship again after Cindy, but that all changed when I met Amy. We have been together for almost 4 years and have been married for 2 now. I'm at my happiest with her, and I had honestly totally forgotten about Cindy until recently, when she made a sudden reappearance in my life. 7 years have passed since our breakup, or rather, she just walked out on me like I meant nothing to her, just over a petty misunderstanding. Last weekend, my wife and I were just chilling at home when she suddenly rang our doorbell. I was the one to open the door. Before I could even register what I was seeing in front of me, she dragged a little boy around 7, right in front of me, and demanded that I pay 7 years of child support immediately. She completely tore into me before I even had a chance to speak and started yelling at me about how she had spent the last 7 years of her life trying to track me down so our son could finally have a father. I just stood there silently while she yelled at me, accused me of being an absent father, and demanded that I pay child support to her and cough up the amount that I had managed to avoid for the last 7 years. I had no idea how to respond to any of that and just stood there like an idiot while she continued to scream at me. Obviously, it was not my fault. I had even waited for her to come back for 1 year after she had left abruptly. She was the one who had abandoned me in our relationship, and I was 100% sure that it was not even my son whom she brought along with her. The reason I was not saying anything was because I was literally too shocked to say a word. Noticing that I had been gone for a couple of minutes, Amy decided to come out and check what was going on, and that's when the situation turned around because as soon as she saw my wife, Cindy's face lost all color, and it appeared that she knew she was screwed. Now, at the time, I was not aware of what was happening, but all I knew was that Cindy was not okay when she saw my wife, and even Amy seemed really surprised to see Cindy there. Before I could say anything, Amy and Cindy started arguing, and I couldn't make out what they were yelling at each other about. But I knew things were bad, and they already knew each other from before. They were at each other's throats, verbally attacking each other. calling each other every derogatory name in the book, and I stood there like a silent spectator along with the other little boy trying to figure out what was going on. Then finally, Amy brought out the big guns and said that if Cindy didn't leave, then she was going to call the cops and that would not be good for her. Cindy did not look happy about it, but ultimately she left after shooting us both dirty looks and cursing us out some more when she heard that Amy threatened to call the cops again. And I am not even kidding, Cindy literally made a run for it. She grabbed her son as soon as Amy mentioned the cops and got out of there as quickly as she could. I had no idea what just happened, but I figured that Amy would tell me everything after Cindy left. Now this is where things took a really weird turn because as soon as Cindy left, Amy turned towards me and started screaming at me, saying things like, "How could you do this to me?" And, "I can't believe you hid this from me." I still didn't say anything and just stood there looking at her really confused because that's how I felt. I was really confused and the things she was accusing me of also did not make any sense to me. She was acting as if I had hidden my relationship with Cindy from her on purpose or something, but I had not done that. I'd always been very open with Amy and told her everything about my ex, so I did not understand why she was reacting the way that she was. The only thing that I hadn't done was show her a picture of Cindy ever, but that wasn't on purpose. It was mostly because I had lost my phone before I moved into my new house and it had all my pictures with Cindy on it, so when I lost that, I lost a lot of pictures that I had with her. I had also deleted most of my pictures with her off my social media because it was a very painful reminder of what our relationship used to be and how she had just disappeared without an explanation. So, to sum it up, I deleted my pictures with her on my social media and then I lost my phone, so I lost all the pictures that I had with her because I hadn't backed them up anywhere else either. I never tried to get them back because I just thought that it was a good thing that I didn't have any pictures with her anymore since it just meant that one less thing that would remind me of her. Sure, we had a couple of group photos that were still up on my friends' social media accounts, but I made them take it all down because I didn't want to see myself with her anymore. I would have shown those pictures to Amy had she ever asked for it, but she didn't and it just seemed like too much work to go digging for group photos or photos of me and Cindy to show to Amy when she didn't even seem interested in seeing the woman, so I never got around to showing Amy how Cindy looked. After that incident, Amy said that she wanted to leave and go live with her parents for a while so that she could cool down and clear her head before she came back. In spite of me begging her to stay, she still left because she said that she just did not want to be in the same room as me for a while and really needed her own space to deal with this. I didn't even know what this was because she did not give me any explanation, and it just felt like a repeat of whatever had taken place to me and Cindy. I was devastated for that entire day, and it wasn't until the next day that I finally made some calls to try and figure out what exactly was going on. I called her parents first, but they told me that I should have told them about Cindy before instead of just springing it on her like this. They fried me for a while and then disconnected the call without giving me any explanation. So then I called Amy's older sister, my sister-in-law, who was the only other person likely to have an explanation. I was completely lost and she was my last hope. So when she answered my call, I wasted no time in explaining what had happened, and that's when she told me the real story of how Amy and Cindy knew each other. So apparently, Cindy and Amy were cousins. Cindy's real name was Cynthia. They're not her real names. I'm just using similar examples, which was something I had never used to refer to her, which is why Amy had never made the connection. Apparently, Cindy had always been a big bully who had pretty much ruined Amy's childhood. Things had been bad between them for a while, but it all came to a head on Amy's 18th birthday. Cindy hooked up with Amy's longtime boyfriend of almost 3 years. My in-laws were pissed and Amy's mother, Cindy's mother's sister, got into a huge fight over Cindy's behavior. Obviously, both parents took their own kid's side and so their families stopped speaking to each other. They were completely cut off from one another. But the bullying did not end there because Cindy decided that she was going to take revenge on her cousin by spreading nasty rumors about her online. It got to a point where their parents had to get involved all over again, and this time Cindy finally decided that she was going to leave Amy alone, but only because her parents had told her to cut it out. That was the last time the two cousins spoke to each other, and finally they met about a couple of days ago because of me. After the phone call with my sister-in-law, I finally figured out why Amy had been so mad when she saw Cindy at our door. Apparently, the meeting with Cindy, or Cynthia as Amy knew her, had brought up painful memories for both of us. I spoke to her after that phone call, and I guess my sister-in-law must have talked to her because she finally talked to me instead of just letting the phone ring. I told her that I understood where she was coming from, but it wasn't exactly my fault that we hadn't been able to find out about this common link between us. Mostly because she'd never asked or shown an interest in Cindy, and rightfully so, since it was all in the past anyway, and she was the future for me. Had she asked me about Cindy even once, then I would have instantly shown her a picture, and we wouldn't have had to wait for so long to find out about this connection between us. I tried to explain my side of the story to her rationally, but for some reason, she still thinks that I'm the bad guy here and that I should have mentioned more about my past relationship, so she would have asked me about it as well, and then we would have been able to uncover this sooner. I just couldn't see how any of this was my fault, and I told her so as well. So she got really mad at me and stopped speaking to me after telling me that I was being stupid and self-involved. She then told me that she had a horrible history with Cindy, and she expected me to understand and respect that, to which I replied that I had a horrible past with her as well. But I didn't see Amy trying to be understanding of that. I guess that really offended her, because she told me that I won the Olympics for having the worst past ever, and then she hung up. Since then, she has not been responding to any of my calls or texts, and I feel like I really screwed up here. My wife usually never loses her cool like this, so this was definitely a very touchy and sensitive subject for her. But I feel like she needs to realize that this is a sensitive thing for me as well, so it's not really fair to put the entire blame on me when I don't even understand what my fault here was exactly. I am just glad that I haven't heard from Cindy yet, because I'm sure that if she continues to try and get involved in my life, then this mess will only get bigger. Anyway, AITA for not telling my wife enough about my toxic ex-girlfriend? Date 1. Hi guys, so first of all, thank you for all the comments that advised me on what to do here. I am really thankful for everyone who had something to say, and for those of you who wanted to know if my wife had ever mentioned anything about the bullying before, no, she had not. She had never told me that she had been bullied relentlessly in the past, and I only found out about that part of her after the phone call with my sister-in-law. It wasn't my fault, I know, but I still took the initiative and decided to go see my wife at her parents' place. I wanted to make this relationship work, and I knew that if I wanted to be with her, then I would have to go and set things right, even if it wasn't my fault, because it was us versus the problem and not her versus me. Yesterday, I finally visited her after almost a week of not speaking to each other. Both my in-laws and Amy were pretty surprised to see me there, but I didn't wait for them to say anything, and as soon as the door had been open, I went straight to Amy and gave her a big bear hug. She was taken aback, but she hugged me back, and we just hugged for a few minutes before we even said anything. This last week had been tough for both of us, and we knew we just wanted to be together. Who was right and who was wrong didn't even matter anymore. As soon as I broke away from the hug, she apologized to me and started crying immediately, because apparently she had thought that she had lost me forever due to the meltdown that she had after Cindy's visit that day, and also because of the way she had been behaving after she left the house. She acknowledged that she had been totally unreasonable and irrational in dealing with the situation and just kept apologizing constantly. Her parents and I consoled her and calmed her down as she sobbed profusely. I was happy to see that she had realized that the way she had been acting was a little unfair to me, but at the same time, I also felt guilty for not reaching out to her earlier, since that is what really caused her to break down when I finally visited her yesterday. After a while, once we talked things out, she packed up her stuff to come back home with me, and here we are back home together. I wouldn't say that things have gone back to normal, but we're working on it and trying to make sense of everything that has happened in the last week, including Cindy's visit, which we still haven't been able to get to the bottom of, but we'll find out what that was all about as well. Update 2. Hey guys, so we finally found out what Cindy was here for. No prizes for guessing that it was for money, which she had made very clear to us as soon as she arrived by demanding that I pay child support for a kid that barely seemed or felt like my own. Amy and my sister-in-law made several phone calls to get to the bottom of what was happening with her, since their families were not on speaking terms and hadn't been for several years, and they found out that the kid was not mine, obviously. But she had been dating some guy for a couple of years. In fact, I think she had even been two-timing me for the last couple of months of our relationship. I don't have any proof for it, but it would sure make sense, because she broke up with me over something really petty and then just cut me out of her life randomly like I was nothing to her. So, it would add up if she had already another guy lined up to take my place after she broke up with me. She was probably already pregnant by the time she left me, and she just needed a way out. The incident with my sister was the most convenient way for her to leave. Most people in her family were aware of her relationship with the other guy, but I was forbidden from speaking to her family unless she was with me, so I never found out about it and never would have had she not made the terrible decision of showing up to my doorstep just to intimidate me into giving her money. As it turns out, the other guy dumped her a couple of months ago, and since she had quit working after she had met the other guy and had her baby, she didn't really have any savings of her own and was running short on money. He'd done the same thing to her that she had done to me, just disappeared without any explanation, and now she was struggling to make ends meet. Her parents had refused to help her because they wanted to save enough to retire, and they wouldn't be able to do so if they started supporting her and her kid all of a sudden, which is just crazy selfish, but it explains why she was so desperate. None of her family has heard from her after she ran into Amy at my house, but I'm sure that somebody will find her and either try to help her or just report her to the cops because from what I'm hearing, she has already scammed a few people out of cash now. These are all just rumors, but they might as well be true because after what she tried to pull with me, I wouldn't really put it past her. Update 3. So it's a late update, but Amy and I have decided to join couples counseling as well as individual therapy because I think we are not really dealing with our past as well as we thought we were. Just one appearance from Cindy had sent our lives crashing and burning. We couldn't let that happen again, so that's why we made the decision that we made. As for Cindy, we heard from a couple of relatives that she was now living with another guy whom she had met online just a few days ago, but he was already smitten with her and had offered to let her move in. Her parents were inconsolable because of how she had been acting, and even more so as she had told them that they were not allowed to meet their grandson anymore. Not to take her side, but honestly, what were her parents even expecting? They had turned her away when she needed them, and now they expected her to just be fine with it? That's just ridiculous. They had always enabled her behavior, be it with me or with Amy. Her parents weren't pleasant people, and clearly neither was she. The apple doesn't fall too far from the tree, and she's living proof of it. Amy and I just feel bad that the poor kid has to suffer the consequences of her bad decisions. Now on to the next story. Story 2. My girlfriend disappears before my proposal. 5 years later, I found out that she ran off with my own brother. I, 29M, have been single for the past 5 years because my girlfriend disappeared from my life altogether 5 years ago. Since then, I've been single and haven't even tried to talk to any other woman because I've still held out hope that someday she might come back to me. I was with my girlfriend since senior year of high school, so she and I were together for almost 6 years before she vanished. We stayed together throughout college, even though we could only meet once or twice a month because of the distance. My girlfriend and I had a happy relationship, in my head, at least. And on my 24th birthday, I was about to ask her to marry me, surrounded by our friends and families. But then, the day before my birthday, she literally disappeared. She said she was going to be late coming home from work, so I waited all night, but she never came back. I made countless calls and sent at least 100 texts, but there was just no response. I even tried to get in touch with her friends and family members, but they'd all blocked me. Our common friends had no idea where she could be, and some of them just told me to forget about her, so even if they knew, they didn't let me know. I couldn't find any of her social media accounts either, and it was like she just disappeared without a word overnight. I still don't know if she knew that I was about to pop the question the next day, or if the timing of her disappearance just lined up, but that was it. She was gone, and there was nothing I could do about it. I even considered going to the cops to file a missing person report, but changed my mind at the last moment because she wasn't missing. She just didn't want to be found by me. I made a lot of fake accounts on social media under different names to find her, but with no success. She'd probably either deleted her accounts or she was using some other name just like me. Whatever the case was, she was untraceable, and eventually I had to give up because I was emotionally exhausted trying to look for her, despite knowing that she didn't want me to find her for whatever reason. I honestly believed that she was happy with me, and she sure played the part when we were together. So instead of moving on with my life, I chose to wait for her to come back, if not to get back to me, then only so that she could at least explain what went wrong and I could have some answers. I did try to make things work with a couple of other women and went out on a few dates, but I just found myself thinking about my ex-girlfriend whenever I was out with anyone else, so I stopped because it was just too painful for me. For almost 4 whole years, I haven't said yes to or asked out anyone on a date because I just couldn't. I'd be fine otherwise, but every time I'd even consider going out on a date, my ex's face would pop up in my head like a warning sign, so I just gave up on it. For 5 years, I've been waiting for her, and I knew it was futile, but I didn't know what else to do. I started going to therapy 3 years ago, and it helped me deal with my feelings and cope with the situation healthfully, so I'm not always moping or worrying, but I wouldn't say that I've forgotten about her. I know it sounds pathetic, but I was really serious about her, and I couldn't believe that she just disappeared without an explanation. But 2 weeks ago, I overheard a conversation between my brother, 33M, and my mother, 62F, when we were visiting her. My brother doesn't live here. He moved to Canada for work when he was 22 and has stayed there ever since. He comes back twice a year for a couple of weeks, but that's about it. This time, though, he's been here for at least a month now because our mother is really sick. She's been diagnosed with a heart disease, and it's serious, so while my brother was supposed to go back 2 weeks ago, he decided to stay on. My brother and I have been on good terms, but we've never been close per se, and it's mostly been because of the distance. We used to be friends as kids, but then he left for college and we lost touch. Then he went away to Canada and built a life for himself there, and I stayed here, so there wasn't much scope for us to ever reconnect. But we'd been getting along well ever since he came back, and it was nice to have him here, even if it was for our mother's sake. Last week, I went over to my mother's place to drop off some soup for my dad because he'd said he'd be late, and I had a spare set of keys as well, so that my mother wouldn't have to come to the door to open it. I went in quietly and was about to enter my mom's room to check up on her, but I stopped in my tracks and froze when I heard my mom and brother in there talking about my ex. My ex had a really unique name, and we didn't know anyone else by that name, so I was sure that it was her that my mom was asking about. She asked my brother when he was bringing her and the kids down here because she wanted to see them once, since she was getting too old and sick to travel now. My brother told her that they'd been trying to think of a way to bring them here without alerting me, and said that it's just too risky, which is why they haven't been flown in yet. As soon as my brother said that they were trying to avoid me, I was sure that this was my ex he was referring to. For a few seconds, I just stood there silently because I couldn't make sense of what I was hearing right now. I left without a word, and once I got home, I decided to log into one of the fake accounts I'd made 5 years ago to do some digging, just to confirm what I already knew. I'd always searched for my ex-girlfriend's name on social media, but never my brother, because he told me that he hated social media and wasn't active anywhere, and it never occurred to me either that he might be lying because I'd never even imagined that he and my ex might be linked. I tried to find him by his actual name but couldn't, so then I used his nickname that our parents called him. Luckily, he had a public account on Instagram with around 200 followers. He must have blocked me because I'd never seen this account. I scrolled through it to find several photos of him with my ex and a kid who looked like the spitting image of my ex, apart from the eyes which looked like my brother's. I think I must have just sat there and wept for an hour because this is where she'd been all along, and everyone had known, but they'd helped my brother cover it up instead of telling me the truth. For 5 years, my own family had been gaslighting me, even though they knew exactly where my girlfriend was. It made me sick to think of all the times my parents tried to comfort me when I'd go crying to them in the initial days of my heartbreak. They knew all along but never told me, and it was sickening. And as for my brother, I couldn't even believe that he had the audacity to steal the life that was meant to be mine from me and then come back here and pretend to be my friend every single year after that. I was disgusted, and I just wanted to cut them out of my life entirely. I didn't want to see any of their faces ever again. But before I did that, I decided to leave them all a little message because I wasn't going to just disappear like my ex did. I wanted them to know that I knew what they'd done, and I was never going to forgive them for it. They'd ruined my life, and for 5 years, they'd refused to do anything to help fix things either. Oh, I'd also found my ex's account from my brother's account, and she'd used a completely different name. So obviously I hadn't been able to find her earlier. The funny thing was, this name was one of the nicknames I used to call her way back when we first started dating, but she told me that she hated it, so I stopped, and it never even occurred to me to try searching for that name either. So make of that what you will, but I sent everyone the same message, and it was just one line. I told them that I knew what they'd done, and all I wanted to ask was why. That's it, because that's all I really wanted to know. These people were my family, my home, and they were supposed to be the ones helping me out in times of trouble, but instead, they'd chosen to hide things from me, lie to me, and just make a total fool out of me. I thought that I'd feel better after sending that text, but I didn't, so I ended up calling up a few of my friends back from high school, went to the nearest bar, and got so drunk that I had to be carried back home. I was in such a state that I didn't even go to work for the next 2 days. It wasn't just the hangover or the binge drinking, but the pain and betrayal. 5 years had passed, and nobody thought that they owed me the truth or an explanation or some closure at the very least. It felt like I was going to drive myself crazy thinking about all that was going on. And so I didn't even check the messages that my family had sent me in response to what I texted them. I'd also texted my ex on her Instagram account because I didn't have her number, but she didn't respond to me at all until yesterday. She sent back 2 paragraphs explaining that she was married and even had a child now, so the fact that I even found her account and texted her was really inappropriate. She told me that she didn't owe me an explanation or closure, and neither did my brother, so I should just forget about her. She also told me that if 5 years hadn't been enough for me to be able to move the heck on, then maybe I was the problem and not her. So instead of being a creep and texting her asking why she'd left me, I should go get myself checked because there's clearly something wrong with you. That's what she told me. I didn't know what exactly I'd been expecting, but this was not it. I absolutely didn't think that she would blow up at me like this because all I asked for was an explanation and nothing else. It's not like I was asking her to get back with me because I knew she was happy with her life now, and I wanted the same for myself, which is why I asked her a really simple question just so that I could move on myself. I didn't consider the repercussions of this, and I still don't know if I was actually wrong for asking her to explain why she'd run away with my brother instead of just coming clean to me and actually breaking up with me like a decent person. The rest of my family keeps trying to call me, but I'm not interested in talking to them, and the few common friends that we used to have are no longer part of my life anyway, so I don't really know whom to talk to about any of this. So, am I the asshole for texting my ex-girlfriend after I found out that she'd been with my brother these past 5 years? After she disappeared without an explanation? Update 1. It's been a week since I posted, and I haven't been able to post further updates because I was too busy catching up on all the work that I'd missed. I realized that even though I wasn't exactly wrong for texting my ex and asking her for an explanation, I did realize that it was all pointless. She was just a horrible human being who cheated on me with my brother despite being with me for 6 years, and then left without a word to start a family with him. That was how it was, and I needed to accept that. This knowledge was all the closure I was going to get. For the first couple of days before she texted back, I didn't know how to feel because it was all so overwhelming, but now I feel considerably better regarding the situation. I'm glad that my ex said what she did because it just made me realize that I dodged a bullet because she was the problem here and not me. I'd given that relationship my all, but she'd preferred my brother over me, and so did the rest of my family, apparently. I'd lost my girlfriend way back anyway, but I had to relive it all over again when I found out about her and my brother. And this time, the loss was much greater because not only did I feel like I was losing my girlfriend, but I was also losing my family. They betrayed me and continued to betray me every single day for 5 whole years. I swear I wouldn't even wish this upon my worst enemy because I've been nothing short of an emotional wreck these past few days. Even my therapist seemed surprised when I told her what had happened. So it's pretty bad. I still haven't responded to my family, and I don't think I'm even going to read their texts because there's just no point. There's nothing that they can say or do at this point to make things right. Not anymore. I know my mother's sick right now, but after what happened, I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive her. The only thing I can do right now is try to move on. Update 2. Hi everyone. My brother came to my house today to have a civilized discussion about our situation. That's what he said while waiting outside my house, calling me immature and juvenile because I refused to let him in. It's been 3 whole weeks since I overheard my mom and brother talking and found out the truth, and since then, they'd all been texting me to try and get me to talk to them, but I hadn't even opened their texts to check out what they'd been saying, let alone respond to them. So as a last resort, my brother came to talk to me today. I didn't even understand why they were all so desperate to get me to talk to them, because as far as I was aware, my family only cared about my brother, or else they would have been honest with me from the beginning. So there was no need for them to act so desperate now just so that I wouldn't cut them off because I knew they didn't care about me as much as they did about my brother. My brother kept trying to reason with me. He kept telling me that he and my ex had fallen in love on one of his visits back home, and they tried to stay apart, but it didn't work, so they just had to run away. And my parents kept it a secret so that my feelings wouldn't be hurt. The plan was to let me know once I found someone as well, so that I'd at least be able to have some emotional support. I don't know why he thought that would be a better option than just being honest with me from the beginning. Imagine I had actually found someone in these past 5 years, and then they came clean to me about what had happened. That would have 100% ruined my existing relationship at the time. Listening to him tell me about their original plan, I was relieved that I didn't find anyone and I found out the truth by myself. After a while, I finally snapped at him and told him to leave me alone or else I'd have to call the police to force him to go. And I really didn't want to do that. So he lost his cool as well, since he'd been trying to convince me for almost half an hour standing out in the cold, and told me that the only reason he was even trying to get me to talk to him was that our mother was extremely apologetic and all the stress about me not speaking to them anymore was worsening her health condition. If Mom hadn't been sick, he wouldn't even have been here to talk to me, and would have happily continued to live his life while I struggled to deal with the pain of it all. My brother truly is a piece of work, but at least he did leave after telling me that he didn't care if I spoke to him or not, but Mom wanted me to talk to her and that was all he was here for. And had it not been for Mom, he would have even flown his wife and son here just to rub it in my face. The taunt really got to me, and I almost wanted to open the door and beat him to a pulp, but I refrained. I told him to go to hell. He cussed at me, and it took all the self-control I possessed for me to hold back. Then he went away, and I've been trying to distract myself by watching Netflix, but I just can't get his taunting voice out of my head. I can't believe that my own family can be this cruel. It was bad enough that they cheated, lied, and betrayed me, and now he's here at my door just to make a mockery out of my pain. That's a new low. I don't know what to do about the situation with my mother, though. Obviously, I don't want her health to get worse, regardless of what they did to me. Maybe I'll have to talk to her at some point because I don't want a guilty conscience if her condition gets worse. I'm sure the rest of my family won't let me live it down if that happens and will hold me responsible for it, so I might just go visit her whenever my brother and father aren't home. Update 3. Hey guys, I finally met my mother and talked to her yesterday, and I'm actually thrilled right now. It has been since I met her because I made her promise me that she and Dad were going to change their respective wills and leave most of whatever they had to me. I've heard that if they left everything to me, it could potentially become grounds for my brother to contest the will, so I'm making sure that they leave him as little as they can. It took a while to persuade her, but I made it very clear to my mother that the only way I would agree to keep in touch with her was if she promised me this, or else she could forget about ever speaking to me again. I had to push very hard, but she did agree to it eventually, and our family lawyer is going to come over the day after tomorrow so I can personally witness the rewriting of the wills. And guess what? This is going to be a secret that I'm going to keep for so long. My parents had kept secrets from me for my brother's sake, and now the tables were about to turn. He would know how it felt to be betrayed by your own family just because they wanted to favor one brother over the other. It's manipulative and cruel of me, but they didn't spare my feelings when they were all covering up my brother and girlfriend's affair, so I don't think I owe them any kindness or compassion at all, not a single one of them. It's significant too because my parents are relatively well off, and it's a considerable amount of money that we're talking about here. It finally feels like I got him back, and I got him back good. People think living well is the best revenge, but this comes kind of close too, if you ask me. Yesterday, when I met my mother, I was skeptical about what was going to happen, and I didn't really have a plan as such. I didn't know what to expect, but at least my brother and my father weren't home. It was just us. As soon as I entered the house, my mother burst into tears and hugged me and started apologizing while talking about how much she regretted her actions, but it just didn't hold any meaning to me. I felt empty and numb even while she was crying, and only comforted her out of habit and not love. She then ended up confessing that she and my dad had known about their affair all along, after they caught my ex with my brother in his room one night while he was visiting. My girlfriend and I had been together for almost 4 years by that point, so this was 2 years before they eloped. I was in the other room and I had no clue, but my brother begged them to keep it quiet, and so they did because they knew they were in love. They all meant to tell me, but they just couldn't get the timing right, and then I decided to tell my parents that I was proposing. They told my brother, and within days, they'd arranged a flight for my girlfriend to move to Canada to avoid the proposal altogether, while I searched for her like a madman back here. They'd warned all their friends, relatives, and literally anyone who was likely to talk to me to never speak of my ex's whereabouts, and that was how they made sure I never got to know. I must say that my family was quite impressive when it came to acting, and I'd nominate them all for Oscars if I could, because they played the perfect parents, comforted me day and night, and pretended to be there for me, and behind my back they'd attended my brother's wedding and their baby shower, and would often take vacations which just meant that they were going to visit my brother and my ex, but would Photoshop themselves into other locations just to fool me. They went to such extreme and insane lengths just to fool me. My mother was telling me the truth now just so that I would forgive her. But if anything, it just made me feel even more frustrated and outraged. So I gave her a piece of my mind and then told her that now if she wanted to make it up to me, she'd have to change her will. It just popped into my head when she was telling me all about their secret life. And I knew that, even if I didn't have the emotional support system I wanted, I could at least demand monetary compensation. So that's what I did, and soon enough, I'll be entitled to 90% of whatever my parents have, and my brother will end up with nothing. I'm obviously still going to cut him out of my life entirely, and I've told my mother that as well, that she's the only person whom I'm still willing to keep in touch with, only because she's sick. She wasn't too happy about it, but she should be grateful that at least I agreed to speak to her after everything that they've done to me, although I might change my mind later. I don't know. All I do know is that my brother and ex deserve each other, and I deserve better, so that's what I'm going to look for now. Better. I don't need any closure from either of them anymore. I'm done. Now on to the next story. Story 3. I played hard to get with my unattractive husband for months before dating him. Now, he's leaving me for a woman who actively pursued him and said that I never truly appreciated him. God, I am so angry at, I don't know, everything right now, and this feels so effed up. I don't even want to talk to my BFF about this right now. It hurts too much ATM. My husband just told me he is leaving me, and I can't believe the reason. I need to give some background. I am 34F and my husband is 38M. We've been married for almost 2 years, have dated 2 years before that, so overall a bit more than 4 years. He's always been very insecure about himself, even though he has a great personality, or so I thought. He is generous, caring, can express his emotions and all this stuff. When I got to know him better, I couldn't believe he wasn't taken. In fact, he had only been in 2 relationships in his life, both 5+ years long though. He told me that's because he's shy and ugly, and women don't really want anything from him, like ever, especially not good-looking ones. I am fairly conventionally attractive, and he has kept telling me for the past years how lucky he feels to finally have found his dream woman, and then her being as attractive as me. I was wary at the beginning, though, so I let him court me quite a bit before going out with him for the first time, etc. I really was fearing for some dark secret of his that I just hadn't uncovered yet. Plus, I don't want to look easy. But turns out, no, he's a really sweet guy and just very shy. I also don't think he's ugly. He's not in any way super handsome or so, and frankly, originally, I thought he was not my type. But his charm melted all of that away quickly. Once we started thoroughly dating, things went fast because it all was so wonderful. Well, apparently, a while ago, he was on his own in the outside area of a restaurant having lunch when this woman went by and apparently struck up a conversation with him. He's shown me a picture of her since I asked him, and she is drop-dead gorgeous. Maybe I am exaggerating because I am so mad, but she definitely looks better than me, I have to admit. He didn't tell me much about what they talked about, just that she was very friendly, and they exchanged numbers and started texting more and more often. He says she at some point openly started pursuing him, even though she knew he was married, saying she just really fell for him and can't let this opportunity pass. He said that he was hesitant once he realized that she was hitting on him, and he was also excited because this literally has never happened in his life. In the past, he repeatedly said that women, at least attractive ones like me, have it easy because we can lean back and let the guys approach us, whereas for him it was always hard work to even get a single date. I always replied that it's not really like that and that being attractive has its own problems, but he then always reminded me of the fact that he had to work really hard to get me to date him, too. He swears he has only met her one more time for lunch after the first encounter, and that he thinks it is not yet an affair. However, he thinks he wants to go forward with her because, as he put it, this is the first woman who is genuinely interested in me. I didn't have to text her for 3 months to get a date or anything. I can't let this pass. Or something along those lines. My memory is a bit hazy. The 3 months refers to the time it took him to get a date with me, by the way. And that is why he says he is breaking up with me. He says it's the right thing to do because he wants to continue contact with her, but also feels doing that would be emotional cheating and he doesn't want to cheat on me. So he ends it before actually starting something with her. I feel devastated. I know there's nothing I can do. I want to be mad at him, but I'm also mad at myself. I really liked him when we first met. Why did I give him a hard time? If I had said what I wanted back then, if I had pursued him instead of playing hard to get, he probably wouldn't be interested in that woman. But I always felt if a woman does that she shows she's easy, and I didn't just want to get laid, so I thought I must act that way, and now it is biting me in the butt. And I, of course, am very mad at him, but he didn't even cheat on me. He's behaving exactly the way I always say people should act when they fall in love with someone else. Ugh. I kind of wished he had actually cheated on me with her. That would actually make it easier. Thanks for letting me rant. I don't need advice. I know I'm effed. Some comments from Op. Yes, it hurts so much. He says it's because this is the first time he doesn't feel like a beggar with a woman. But I mean, that's how the dating game is, right? We can't make it too easy for men or they think we are easy. He first started mentioning the 3 months thing after I told him that as soon as he started talking to me back then, I fell for him but intentionally made him wait. Truth be told, I was head over heels for him 5 minutes after first starting to talk to him. So he always pulled my leg saying, "You made me wait 3 months even though you knew after 5 minutes. I sort of get what he's complaining about there. But then again, I think that's what I have to do as a woman to ensure a guy has honest intentions. On the not liking him, that is only regarding his physical appearance. He's a bit on the chubby side and, well, early hair loss and such. Only judging looks, I honestly would never have talked to him. We got introduced by a common friend, so we got talking, and that captivated me. But I honestly told him that physically, he's technically not my type. I wish I could see it like that, but you don't know him. I mean, yeah, in college I would have called him a loser. But back then I was stupid, I guess. Thanks, and yes, frankly, I don't know why she approached him. I mean, for me it doesn't matter, but he's not exactly Chris Hemsworth. I know what you mean, but I don't think it's fair. I mean, men and women are different. I know he told me that he always felt ugly and stuff, but I mean, I married him and, well, I mean, women get compliments. I had no idea that men are looking for compliments too. I mean, it's true I never had to work to get to meet men. Then again, I had to sift through so many losers. I wish I could say you were right on him settling for me, but he's a very honest guy and I truly felt like he always was madly in love with me. I don't think he really cheated on me though. As I said, that would make it so much easier to hate him. Well, kind of, but I mean if I had just told him right away I liked him, then I would have looked easy. But after all, he's the man, I am the woman. I mean, you don't buy your husband flowers or jewelry or a massage, do you? It's always been like that for me. Comment 1. Do not worry. If that woman is drop-dead gorgeous and pursued him while she knew he was married, then she is bonkers and trash, and this will bite both of them in their asses soon enough. This is the case when trash took itself out. Your husband should have worked on his self-esteem issues and not jump for the first woman who gave him attention like this. You are at no fault in this situation. Comment 2. Exactly, if that woman actively pursued him knowing full well that he was married, then I think this tells a lot about her character. Letting go of a 4-year relationship with a person you love just because of a random hot person usually doesn't go well. Comment 3. That's just bananas. I thought I was insecure, but he takes the cake. Crazy town. Feels like you dodged a bullet. Imagine him pulling this shit after 10 years of marriage and 3 kids in. I'm so sorry, but I don't think there is anything you could have done different to have a different outcome. He will always be insecure, and this experience will give him validation for a bit, and then he will continue looking for it outside of himself. Edit. Holy shit. This blew up so much. First, thank you all so much for your comments. This is much appreciated, and also some of you made me really think. I still feel this was unwarranted, and if he was so unhappy, he should have told me. But I guess I wasn't as good of a wife as I thought. I didn't really show him that I love him and why, and didn't put in much effort. And someone said he was starving for attention, and I guess that's my fault in a way. Ugh, still, I think just dropping me like this isn't right. I managed to get the courage to talk to my BFF and we'll meet later so I can tell her everything, and she spontaneously will take me out for a spa weekend. I hope I can get my head clear there. I was so scared, but she was not at all condescending. She's the best. I feel like I couldn't have mustered up the courage for that were it not for all your support. So thank you all so much, even the critical ones. Update. A couple days ago, I posted here about my husband suddenly leaving me because of, well, having experienced for the first time that a woman actually showed active interest in him. Since links are not allowed in this subreddit, please check my profile for my post history. Yesterday, my husband and I met for the first time since he up and left last Friday, and frankly, after the meetup, I was very shaken. So it took me until today to be able to write about this. Since so many people have reached out to me with helpful comments and all, I think you deserve an update, but I really wasn't up to it yesterday. Also, this is really long, so sorry in advance. There's just so much to cope with. So here we go. The situation felt very awkward, and I got the impression the whole time that he genuinely feels sorry for how things were and that what he is doing hurts me. I know many of you said he's a douche, a cheater, and whatnot, and I really understand you and am mad at him myself. But on the other hand, you all do not know him like I do. He's a very honest person, he despises lying and is really bad at this. He carries his heart on his tongue, and I know him well enough to sense his feelings. Did that help me? Not much. Now, even if I wished, I couldn't paraphrase our talk, and I am sure I will miss certain things, and overall it was a mixture of him telling and me asking questions, and all is a big flurry in my head, so I'll just summarize, I guess. First, he told me that he really loved me, and he still does, but he feels that his feelings for the new woman are stronger. He told me her name. Let's call her Jasmine. Not her real name. He admits Jasmine is gorgeous, but claims that that on its own was in no ways relevant for his decision. Yeah, right. He told me that she originally approached him because of a book he was reading during lunch. Supposedly the book's author is her uncle, and she was able to tell my husband some funny stories about the time her uncle drafted that book. He says he and Jasmine have very similar interests. Jasmine also reads sci-fi as he does because of said uncle who is a sci-fi author, and both like gaming and stuff. He says after they exchanged numbers, they initially only wrote about stuff like that, and later on they talked about other hobbies and interests and found more and more common ground, as he put it. He also admitted that like 2 weeks or so ago, he started to wonder if he should actively tell me about her, seeing how she turned from an acquaintance to what he deems a friend. I interjected that they don't know each other long enough to consider her a friend, but he says he feels Jasmine is really genuine with him. This is a man who cannot pick up social clues unless they are spelled out for him, but whatever. He also feels a lot more in tune with Jasmine than he does with me. Admittedly, we seem to have less common interests, but I never felt like I have to be exactly like my partner. Opposites can complement each other well, and I always felt we do well. Looks like he feels much happier with someone catering to his interests a lot more. He also became a bit self-critical then. He says after he left for his friend's place, he sat down and reread his conversation history with Jasmine, and he realized that she had indeed been flirting with him before she told him she wanted more. It didn't start out flirtatious, but he admits he totally missed that. He opened up the app on his phone and showed me the beginning, and then when she started flirting. He might have toned the messages, but at least the beginnings were really friendly. The flirtatious parts, however, were blatantly obvious in my eyes, but he actually blames himself for that and says that while that doesn't change his feelings for her, it means he should have noticed this earlier and, well, he said make the decision to pursue her earlier. That sort of broke me, and I started sobbing because it sounds as if I never had a chance compared to Jasmine. He even wanted to console me, and I allowed that for a couple minutes, but then I sought some distance again. It both felt good and bad to be in his arms. Then it was time to ask me why she is so attractive to him that he leaves me, his wife, for just the mere possibility of being with another woman. I mentioned that someone, I didn't say Reddit, suggested she might be a scam or just interested in breaking up marriages and going after men who are taken and such. He, of course, vehemently denied that. Supposedly they met last Sunday to go out for dinner, and they talked about the fact that she approached him even though he is married, and she claims to have a really bad conscience about this and that she never would have done it had she not felt such a deep connection between them, blah blah blah. I must admit I really struggled through that part because if it is true, it hurts me, and if it isn't, it hurts even more that he falls for BS. He then told me in excruciating detail about his dating life and how long he was a virgin and how he was always treated by girls back in middle school and high school and by the women in college, and later on how he really feels that he always has to be the one initiating, fighting even for a chance, and felt like he was always treated as unworthy by almost all women and how that made him bitter. He admitted that, but also how he always thought that someone who truly fits him, fits his personality, his character, his being would be someone who would not make him jump through hoops, someone who'd outright tell him she is intrigued by him and wants him. He says he loves me dearly and was always very grateful for being with me, but that even with me he always felt somewhere between a beggar and the subject of a pity party where I bestowed the grace of my companionship onto him instead of actually liking and wanting him. When I asked him whether that means he settled for me, he vehemently denied that. He said when we started to date, I really treated him better than any woman had done before, so he really thought this was what he had been looking for, and before meeting Jasmine he never felt like he needed more. I of course tried to tell him that I am not with him out of pity or anything and explained why I made him wait 3 months and why I think the man should court the woman and so forth. And then I also admitted that I might not have given him the appreciation he deserved. This time it actually was his turn to drop tears for a bit. He said hearing that made him both grateful and unhappy that he never really communicated better about this. I told him that hearing him say that feels like he is putting the blame on me, and I swear to God his eyes like doubled their size and he looked genuinely shocked, and he apologized many times and said he did not want me to think he actually has any bad feelings about having to wait back then, and that this is a situation where no one is to blame, but especially not me. He said I have been a wonderful wife and all, but that with Jasmine it just feels different and like a deeper connection that the two of us have, and that while he thought that I was wonderful, he now realizes that what he really was looking for in life was something else. So he says reconciliation is not really an option because he realized that we're not right for each other, and even if it doesn't work out with Jasmine, he knows now that he actually needs something that I just not am. I mentioned marriage counseling, and he said that it's not like our marriage has issues, but that the issue is that we're just not right for each other. There were more things we said, and maybe I'll add some later, but right now I'm too mentally exhausted, especially because I still don't feel like I can hate him because he felt so freaking honest. I think he at least truly believes all the things he said, but that woman still might be a total liar or a scam. He at least promised to be careful with her financial wise, but he assured me she's not. I don't know what to make with any of this. It hurts. I guess my marriage is over. He actually looked really miserable. I don't think he wants to hurt me. I wonder if I want to hurt him though. Well, I mean, it's not like this is just the first woman who hit on him since we started dating or so. It's literally the first woman to do that in his entire life. While personally I can't imagine that because I get hit on at least once a day, I guess it must be difficult for him. I just thought that I was enough for him. Is wa short for waste of a husband? I have to admit that by now I realize I didn't. I took him for granted. I saw myself as the prize which he constantly has to fight for. I always thought it showing enough that I married him and tell him I love him and, well, be his wife. I don't know how to put this. He's not very physically attractive, and he is very insecure and rather nerdy and shut off unless he's lawyering, which is the only thing he feels he is actually good at, even though he is good at so many things. And when he was younger, he wasn't just chubby, he was outright fat and always hated himself for it and all. I do believe him when he says that, and actually his sister has told me a couple times how he always was miserable when he was younger because of this. I was just trying to be honest there. Looking back from here, I obviously totally would have appreciated him more. But if there had been no Jasmine, how serious would I have taken him? I know myself, I might have brushed it off, which would have been wrong. I just don't want to portray myself as perfect because the seffed up has shown me I'm not. He's got a wonderful personality, at least I thought so. Really, he's normally so sweet and caring and helpful and attentive and all. When I talked to him, his appearance quickly melted away by his character because, well, really, he's honest and open-minded and believes in justice and all that. He's not a loser, he's a really sweet person. I think no woman wanted him because they never talked to him. Now for some comments. Comment 1. Let him go. The reality of online dating is going to knock him on his ass. Comment 2. Patiently waiting for the update in 6 months that he tried to crawl back because Tinder scarred him. Comment 3. I would love for it not to turn out this way, but from the way she's speaking, it sounds like she might take him back unless she finally gets a cycle of anger pumping through her. She needs it to move on. Comment 4. My ex-husband was very similar to this guy, insecure because he was short and skinny, blah blah. He went on a school trip with one of our kids and met another mom there. They exchanged numbers and started texting. And he said he wanted to open up our marriage and practice ethical non-monogamy. It's something I'd said in the past I would possibly be open to, but would never ever push anyone into it. I agreed and had no problem getting dates. The other woman he was interested in only wanted to F him if I didn't know and her husband didn't know. He was absolutely emasculated by Tinder, whereas I had a regular boyfriend who was super nice to me. I also reconnected with my first crush and we ended up together. I had first offered to close back up the marriage, but he said that would cause resentment anyway. Long story short, I am now happily divorced from ex, married to my soulmate, and he treats me and, more importantly, my kids way better than ex ever did. He's also actually a partner who helps with cleaning and cooking without being asked. Ex had one brief relationship and now volunteers for a non-paying committee in addition to his work, so he's frequently traveling on the weeks he's supposed to have his kids, leaving them with his mom. Comment 5. People need to read all of the comments OP left in the original that weren't included in this post. I promise no one would feel bad for her if they did. Comment 6. And even with the comments included, I thought she looked bad. Comment 7. Just reading the ones that were posted here already gave me bad vibes about the way she treated him. Comment 8. Right, OP never hit on her husband and Jasmine was the first one to do it. GTFO OP. Effed around and found out. She wanted to play games and make her husband chase her and do the work. The man found his self-respect and realized everyone deserves to be desired. For example, there's a lid for every pot. Something tells me it wouldn't have mattered if Jasmine wasn't conventionally attractive. Comment 9. I started out this post thinking, okay, typical story where younger girl is mildly interested in an older guy. The guy throws away his life for her, and a week or two later realizes it was a mistake. And then we get OP talking about how she led him on for 3 months despite liking him before that. I've been in a similar situation before and it was downright cruel. She also would have called him a loser in college. Like what? You're calling people losers when you're in college? Seems to me like he realized his self-worth and OP is mad cause someone she sees as below her league is ending the relationship. Now on to the next story. Story 4. Dated the guy I told my ex-BF not to worry about after we broke up. Am I really wrong for this? So, 3 months ago, I, 21F, went out to a club as it was student night, which means £2.50 p drinks. I went out with a big group of girls. While out, I met M, 23M. I don't remember exactly how or why we started talking, but he was talking to me and my friend. While we were talking, he realized his friend had walked off, so me and my friend told him to stay with us and hang out. We ended up spending the rest of our time there with him, and though he was talking to my friend too, me and him really clicked well. We were both in relationships, though, and made it clear this wasn't some hookup thing, even showing each other pics of our partners. But as the night went on and we got drunker, I admit it sort of felt like our interactions did sort of border on flirty. Some examples are, 1. If we were walking through a crowded area, we would hold hands so we didn't get separated. 2. I danced with him a lot, again holding hands, no grinding or anything. 3. I did hug him a lot, and at one point he picked me up during a hug and I wrapped my legs around him. This caused my skirt to roll up, and he rolled it back down for me when he put me down. 4. I pretended to be his GF to get rid of a girl who was pestering him by saying, "Could you not flirt with my boyfriend?" and kissing him on the cheek and then holding onto his arm. 5. At the end of the night when I had to leave, I hugged him goodbye and we sort of accidentally kissed. By that, I mean we both tried to kiss each other on the cheek at the same time and our lips touched. This was an accident and we both apologized and it was awkward. The week after, me and him ended up texting quite regularly and we arranged, it was my idea, to have both our friend groups meet so we could hang out again. We had good chemistry, so we thought our friends probably would too. Well, it went great, and now our friend groups are mixed and I have a bunch of new friends. 2 of his friends have ended up dating 2 of my friends, one of them even being BF and GF. Unfortunately, though, my boyfriend was less than happy about M. He didn't like that we texted. He hated the story of how we met, which I got, as I can see how from the outside it looks suspect, even though our intentions were innocent. I did introduce the 2 of them, and they seemed to get on well and were laughing around together. But then later that night, my BF started slagging him off for no reason, which caused me to argue because he was being fake. About 2 weeks ago, M broke up with his GF. I'm not sure the exact details. I think they just sort of fizzled out due to being at different stages in life. She wanted kids, he wasn't ready. When my BF found out, he told me he didn't want me to text or be friends with him anymore, as he was now single. I said, I'm not going to cut him off when he's going through a hard time, and that the idea that I now all of a sudden can't be friends with someone just because they are single is ridiculous. My BF wouldn't accept that and said if I carried on being friends with him, he would break up with me. So I broke up with him then and there, as I was tired of him acting jealous and controlling. On Thursday, I got a text from my friend who was in a relationship with one of M's friends. She said her and my other friend who's dating one of his friends were going to London on Friday for a trip and asked if me and M wanted to come. I texted him and he said his friend had asked him the same question, and we both agreed we'd go. When we got there, things were different than I anticipated and it definitely felt like a triple date. We did mini golf and then went to food in a cocktail bar. At the end of the night, we decided to stay in London as we didn't manage to fit in everything we wanted to do. We all got hotel rooms and me and M got one too with 2 beds in the room. However, we ended up sharing a bed and making out a bit. The next day, we went out to Camden Food Market and then to Babylon Park, a giant arcade. We decided to stay another night, and this time me and M had to get a room with 1 bed, as there were no double rooms. We went to a club and then back to the room. I ended up giving him head, but that was it. The next morning, I woke up to like 50 messages from my ex calling me a liar and a cheat and saying he knew that I was away on a triple date. I told him I was single and could do what I want. He kept accusing me of cheating with M, saying, it's weird after a 3-year relationship for me to move on in 2 weeks with a guy we had fought about and who I said wasn't a problem. I told him M wasn't the problem, he was the problem, and that if he hadn't been so jealous, none of this would have happened. He kept accusing me of gaslighting him and just being dramatic, so I blocked him. I told M and the 2 couples we were with, and they said he was just being pathetic and that everything was above board. But some of our other friends say I'm wrong for moving on so soon and with M. Am I? Update. November 13th, 2023. So yesterday, me and M went for a late meal like 8 p.m. and had a talk. We agreed that we both really like each other and want to give it a shot. So we have decided to be exclusive while we see where this goes. He stayed round mine last night and I did sleep with him. It was amazing. I am seriously happy and excited for the future. Afterwards, we spontaneously booked a holiday to Cyprus. Just the 2 of us, and we leave on Monday. He is half Greek Cypriot, half Jamaican and has a villa out there, so we just needed flights. As for my 2 friends who thought I should have waited, I drafted a text with help from a user in DMs and sent it to them both in a group chat. It says, "Hi girls. I know you have been disappointed in my actions and feel it was a bad look to move on so quickly. I know you care deeply about me and just want what's best for me, and for me to make good decisions for myself. I do feel like I want to clear up what happened a little, / my thought process. What you need to understand is, in the moment of the ultimatum, I saw 2 paths ahead of me. One where I spend the rest of my 20s in Jay's bedroom watching him smoke weed and play Xbox, begging him to go on a date and only getting attention when he wants sex. Then I saw one where I stayed friends with them and we all got to hang out as a big group and go to events, go play golf, go on our holidays, etc. I knew then and there that the relationship was done. I didn't just choose M over Jay. I chose this life where we all get to hang out together and actually live and have fun versus just me and Jay sitting in and doing nothing all the time. It wasn't just a choice between M and Jay. It was a choice of all of you and the life we've built these last few months versus Jay. As for how quickly I moved on, you both know I had been unhappy for a long time and there was only so long that I could beg for him to change before giving up. To you, it might seem like I lost my feelings for him overnight, but truthfully this has been building since the start of this year. I have begged, pleaded, cried for him to change and unfortunately he never did. All he ever wanted to do is smoke weed and that was it. By the time he threatened to end it, I had already mourned the relationship 100 times. He had already spent all my tears. He had already drained me emotionally and I had no more emotions left to give him. Breaking up with him wasn't heartbreaking, it was liberating. That is why I did not feel the need to wait. I love you both so much and I hope you can be happy for me. But if not, that is your decision. My friends replied and said they know that I was unhappy and that they think I made the right decision and that they're happy for me. They said sorry for coming across as judgmental, that it wasn't their intention and they were just worried I was making a rash decision. We are all meeting tonight, just us girls, and we're going out for a meal and some drinks and put all this behind us for good. Then I'll be going to M's for the first time to meet his parents, which I'm excited about. My ex is staying blocked and I doubt I'll ever see or hear from him again as he never leaves his room. So that is the end of that, and I'm closing that miserable chapter of my life for good. Thank you for everyone who gave me helpful advice. Thank you for the user RU556, who DM'd me and helped me draft that message. And thank you even to all the haters who helped me practice fleshing out my beliefs/reasonings and defend my actions. Without you, I wouldn't have found the words for that text. I doubt I'll use this account again as I got what I wanted from it. Goodbye, Reddit. Now on to the next story. Story 5. My daughter made up a lie about my husband walking in on her naked, and our whole family believed her and tormented him. Now he's getting a divorce, and I've lost everything I loved. I need advice because my entire family is blowing up my phone, saying I'm a horrible mother for not taking my daughter's side in this mess. I've been married to my husband, Mark, for 5 years, and honestly, he's the best thing that's happened to me since my daughter was born. We met at a backyard barbecue through mutual friends. I wasn't looking for anything serious back then. My ex had cheated on me with my friend from work, and I was focused on raising my daughter and working my retail job. But Mark was different from any guy I dated before. Most guys would run when they found out I had a kid, or they'd pretend to be okay with it just to get with me. Mark actually took the time to get to know both of us. He'd bring board games when he came over, helped my daughter with her math homework, and never tried to force a relationship with her. He was just there, being supportive without pushing boundaries. The relationship between my daughter, Amy, 19F, and Mark has always been okay. Not super close, but definitely respectful. Amy had a rough time with my previous boyfriend, Tom, who tried way too hard to be her new dad right away. He'd show up at her school events uninvited, try to ground her when she broke rules, and even tried to get her to call him Dad after we'd only been dating for 6 months. It was a complete disaster that ended with Amy refusing to speak to me for weeks when I stayed with him after she told me he made her uncomfortable. That relationship finally ended when I caught Tom going through Amy's phone while she was sleeping. He said he was just trying to protect her, but it was effed up. So when Mark came along, I was really careful about introducing them. But Mark just let things develop naturally. He'd help Amy with college applications or give advice when she asked, but they didn't hang out one-on-one or anything. Amy even told me a few times she was glad I found someone who wasn't trying to replace her dad. Everything was fine until Thursday night. Mark and I were watching an action movie in the living room. We had to pause it when Mark got up to use the bathroom. We can't use our master bath right now because it's being completely renovated. The contractors found black mold last month, so we had to get the whole thing gutted, and the water's completely shut off up there. I heard Mark knock on the main bathroom door twice, 3 clear knocks each time. I remember specifically because the movie was paused, so the house was quiet except for the knocking. Then I heard screaming from the bathroom. I ran over and found Amy completely naked trying to cover herself while yelling at Mark to get out. I didn't see exactly what happened, but when I got there, Mark was stumbling backwards and trying to close the door while saying sorry over and over. When things calmed down, I asked Mark what happened. He said he knocked, but nobody answered, so he thought it was empty. He opened the door and saw Amy naked in front of the mirror and immediately tried to leave. I went to talk to Amy afterwards to get her side of things. She said she was changing when Mark suddenly walked in on her. I asked why she didn't answer when he knocked, and she claimed he never knocked at all. I told her I definitely heard the knocks myself. I was sitting right there in the quiet living room when it happened. That's when she finally admitted she had her AirPods in and was listening to music, so she hadn't heard anything. They were a birthday gift from Mark last month, and she's been wearing them constantly since then. We got everything sorted out that night, or at least I thought we did. Mark apologized again and explained he really thought no one was in there. Amy gave him a hug and said sorry for screaming at him. The whole thing seemed like just an awkward accident we could all laugh about later. Mark even made a joke about how we needed to get the master bathroom fixed ASAP to avoid any more incidents. We went back to watching our movie, and everything seemed fine. Amy even sat with us for a while and made fun of our taste in superhero movies, like usual. But then everything went to complete shit. My sister started calling me nonstop the next day, saying I was an idiot for keeping a creep in my house. Other family members were texting horrible things about Mark too. My mom called crying about how she always had a bad feeling about him, which is total bullshit because she literally just had us over for dinner last week and was bragging to her friends about what a great son-in-law Mark is. I was confused as hell until I found out Amy had told everyone a totally different story. She left out the part about wearing AirPods and was telling people she actually answered Mark when he knocked, but he came in anyway to look at her naked. She even added details about him taking his time to leave and looking her up and down before closing the door. Thank God we have security cameras in the hallway. Mark installed them last year after someone tried breaking into cars in our neighborhood. The footage clearly shows him knocking on the door twice before going in. There's no audio, but you can see him knock, wait, knock again, and then open the door. You can also see him immediately stumbling backwards to leave as soon as he opens it. I sat Amy down and confronted her about the lies. At first, she completely denied saying anything different or telling anyone at all. I got pissed and asked how my sister knew what happened. Then Amy went quiet before saying she only told her cousin about it, who must have told her mom, my sister. When I asked why the hell she'd lie and make Mark look bad, she denied lying again. I repeated exactly what my sister told me about Amy's claims, and then she started crying and apologizing. She said she was just talking and making up scenarios with her cousin. The past few days have been a complete nightmare. More family members keep calling and messaging awful shit about Mark as Amy's effed up story spreads. My brother even showed up at Mark's work yesterday trying to confront him. Luckily, Mark's boss knows us both well and had security escort my brother out. I showed Amy some of the horrible messages people are sending about Mark and told her she needed to fix this since her lies caused it. She refused, saying she didn't spread the story herself and only told her cousin. She claims she doesn't want to say anything now because people will think badly of her. She kept saying, "Everyone knows Mark. This will blow over soon." But it's not blowing over. It's getting worse every day. Everything went from bad to worse when Mark walked into the living room with his bags packed yesterday. He said he was going to stay with his parents for a while because he can't deal with being made out to be some pervert when he didn't do anything wrong. Amy started crying and apologizing over and over, promising she'd fix everything, but Mark still left. I don't blame him, honestly. My family is making him out to be some kind of predator when all he did was accidentally walk in on someone after knocking twice and getting no response. I straight up told Amy that if I end up divorced because of her lies, she's getting kicked out of my house. I said she needs to fix this shit and tell everyone what really happened because I'm not losing the best man I've ever had over her stupid lies. She begged me to help her fix it, but I refused. I told her she's not a kid anymore. Her attention-seeking lies caused this mess, and it's on her to clean it up. She tried saying she was just embarrassed about being walked in on, but that's no excuse for making up lies that could ruin someone's life. I tried helping at first by showing people the security footage and explaining what actually happened, but now I'm being accused of taking my husband's side and not providing a safe space for my daughter. My sister is telling everyone I'm choosing dick over my own child, and my mom keeps sending me articles about grooming and abuse. I don't know what the hell to do anymore. Mark won't talk to me beyond saying he needs space. Amy is crying all the time, and I feel like I'm losing my mind. This isn't even the first time Amy has pulled something like this for attention. When she was 16, she told her friends I was abusing her because I grounded her for sneaking out to a party. Her friends' parents called CPS and everything. Took weeks to sort that mess out. The investigation was horrible. They interviewed all her teachers, checked her for bruises, went through our whole house. I almost lost my job because I had to keep taking time off for meetings with social workers. Amy eventually admitted she was just mad about being grounded and wanted sympathy from her friends. She went to therapy after that incident and seemed to be doing better, which makes this new situation even more frustrating. The therapist said Amy had abandonment issues from her dad leaving when she was little, and she acts out for attention when she feels insecure. But she's an adult now. She can't keep making up lies that hurt people. Mark has been amazing these past 5 years. He helped pay for Amy's car last year, a brand new car, because he was worried about her driving my old beater to college. He takes care of all our bills so I can work part-time and spend more time with her. He even set up a college fund for her without me asking and has been putting money in it every month. He's never been anything but supportive and respectful. For my last birthday, he surprised me by paying off the rest of my student loans, so I wouldn't have that debt hanging over me anymore. Now he's being called a predator and creep by my entire family over a lie, and I'm being called a bad mother for defending him. I've already had to delete my Facebook because people keep sharing posts about me enabling abuse and shit like that. I know Amy was embarrassed about the situation. If Mark had actually been creepy or done something inappropriate, I would 100% be on her side and kick his ass out immediately. But he didn't do anything wrong. He knocked multiple times, got no response, and immediately left when he realized his mistake. We even have video proof. Amy's lies are destroying this man's reputation and possibly our marriage over a simple accident that was partially caused by her wearing AirPods in the bathroom. I get being startled and embarrassed, but making up lies about someone who's only ever been kind to you? That's effed up. I don't know how to fix this. Mark was the first guy who ever treated both me and Amy with real respect after Amy's dad abandoned us when I got pregnant at 17. I didn't think I'd ever find someone willing to take on a teenage daughter. Most guys I dated either ignored Amy completely or tried too hard to replace her dad. Mark was the first one who found the right balance. Now all of that might be ruined because my daughter decided to make up stories for attention again. Any advice? Update 1. Sorry for taking a few days to update. I'm honestly not in a great place right now and had to get my thoughts together. My husband asked for a divorce, and I don't know what to do anymore. Everything feels like it's falling apart faster than I can try to fix it. Let me answer some common questions first since my inbox is flooded. Yes, we have locks on all the doors. I don't know why Amy didn't lock the bathroom door. It's a habit I've tried to get her into since she was young, but she never listens. The cameras inside only show the hallway and exterior doors, not inside any rooms. Mark installed them after the car break-in last year. We can't use our master bathroom because it's being completely renovated. The contractors found black mold behind the tiles last month and had to gut everything. The water is shut off up there until they finish the work. Mark came back Friday to talk. He showed me his phone, and I wanted to puke reading the messages from my family. They're calling him a pedophile, asking how many times he's peeked at Amy before, saying they always knew something was off about him. The same effing people who were at our barbecue last month praising Mark for paying Amy's tuition and buying her a new car. My brother Mike even posted on Facebook about how he always knew Mark was creepy because he caught him staring at Amy at Christmas last year. That's complete bullshit. Mark was helping Amy set up her new laptop that he bought her while Mike was passed out drunk on the couch, like he is every holiday. According to Mark, this shit is affecting his work now too. Some of my family members actually contacted his office. My sister Lisa found out where he works and sent an email to his whole department about him being a predator. He got called into HR to explain himself. They're not taking action since there's no actual case against him, and he showed them the security footage, but the damage to his reputation is done. The conversation was brutal. Mark said he loves me and appreciates that I stood up for him, but Amy's lies have caused too much damage. He said he spends every day at work or his parents' house waiting for the police to show up to arrest him. The fear and stress have completely broken him. He doesn't see any way to come back from this. He hasn't slept properly in days because he keeps having nightmares about being arrested. His mom told me he barely eats anymore and just sits in his old room staring at his phone, reading all the horrible shit people are saying about him. I begged him to reconsider. I offered to kick Amy out, go to counseling, anything to save our marriage. I showed him proof that I've blocked my family members who spread the lies. I even suggested we move away and start fresh somewhere new. He has an open job offer in Seattle from last year that he could probably still take. But he said I was missing the point. His life could have been ruined by Amy's lie. My family will never trust him again. They'll always think he's a creep. Even if Amy comes clean now, they'll assume we forced her to change her story. They'll probably think I'm choosing my abuser over my daughter or some shit like that. When I suggested cutting off my family completely and moving away, he asked about Amy. I said she could stay with my parents. He asked if I'd be willing to abandon her completely because he doesn't want to be near her or alone with her ever again. Before I could answer, he said he'd never ask me to abandon my child, and he wouldn't respect me if I did it for his sake. He said divorce is the only option. He actually started crying when he said this. I've only seen Mark cry twice before. At our wedding and when his dad had a heart attack last year. Amy came running and crying. Apparently, she'd been listening to our conversation from the hallway. Before she could say anything, Mark jumped up from the couch and held his hands out, telling her to stay back. He pulled out his phone and said, "Before you say anything, I'm recording now." The look on Amy's face when she realized Mark was afraid to be alone with her without recording sucked. She tried apologizing, saying she never meant for things to get so out of hand. She admitted she was just making up scenarios with her cousin, and her cousin ran with it. Mark asked why she didn't correct things immediately. Then she said she thought it would blow over since everyone knows him. He showed her the messages he's getting, and she went completely silent. We talked for about 4 hours, but nothing changed. Mark is giving us 3 months to move out since it's his house. He said Amy can keep the car since it was a gift, and he'll finish paying this year's tuition. But that's it. He hasn't gotten a lawyer yet, but told me to get one. He wants to handle the divorce amicably, but said I should still get legal representation just to protect myself. He said he doesn't resent me but can't stay married after this. He actually apologized to me, saying he was sorry he couldn't be stronger and work through this, like any of this is his fault. Amy just sat on the floor looking completely broken while Mark discussed divorce terms like he was returning a defective product. I honestly don't remember much of what happened after that. Everything felt muffled and surreal. Amy was sobbing, "I'm sorry," over and over on the floor. When I finally got up, I saw Mark's car still in the driveway. He was sitting there crying. Seeing that destroyed me completely. This man who helped me rebuild my life after years of struggling as a single mom, who treated my daughter better than her own father ever did, was now broken because of lies. Amy and I haven't spoken since Friday. She's finally told everyone the truth and shared the security footage. So now family members keep showing up trying to apologize. I just closed the door in their faces. They won't stop trying to contact me. When I block their numbers, they use new ones. When I block their social media, they make new accounts. My sister even had her teenage son message me pretending to be a classmate of Amy just to get me to read her apology. These are the same people who were spreading lies about Mark last week, and now they want to act like saying sorry fixes everything. I don't want to lose my husband. He's the first man who ever treated me with real respect and love. When I got pregnant with Amy at 17, her dad blocked my number and moved state. Every guy after that either treated me like damaged goods or tried to control me and Amy. Mark was different. I've tried everything to convince him to try counseling, but he just keeps saying, "I can't take the risk." I went to his workplace, but his boss sent him home. I tried going to his parents' house, but they won't let me see him. His mom actually started crying when she saw me, saying Mark hasn't been the same since this happened. I don't know how to fix this. Moving Amy out now seems pointless since Mark already said he'd think less of me for abandoning her, and because I would need to leave the house as well. But I don't want to lose the only good man I've ever had either. My daughter's lies are destroying the only healthy relationship I've ever been in. She's done this shit before with the CPS incident, but this time she might have ruined multiple lives with her stupid stories. This shit sucks. Edit. I forgot how Reddit fixates on one thing. The comment I made about the house. I have no intention of trying to take his house or anything like that. It's not my house. I had questions in my previous post about the house, and I think I just answered them myself. I'm not going to try to take his house. He owns it and has owned it since before we got together. I have no right to the house and will not try to take it. I hope this clears things up. Update 2. It's been a while, and I know people have been asking for updates. I haven't felt like posting because I've been crying myself to sleep every night. Everything is completely effed up. I've lost my husband, my family, and my daughter. My whole life has fallen apart in less than a month over lies that never should have been told. The divorce is happening for sure now. I got served with papers, and Mark wants nothing to do with us anymore. I moved out of the house and I'm staying with my friend until I can figure shit out. She's the only person who stuck by me through all of this. Everyone else either believed Amy's lies or is now trying to apologize after spreading them. I've blocked all contact with my family, but they keep finding ways to reach me through new numbers and fake profiles. I don't know how long I can stay with my friend. My family showing up at her apartment is starting to affect her life too. Her neighbor already complained to the landlord about all the drama, and my friend works from home, so she can't deal with people knocking on her door all day. I need to find my own place, but I can't afford much on my salary alone. I had to go back to full-time at the retail job I used to hate because I need the money. Mark used to handle most of our bills, but now I have to manage everything myself. The part-time schedule was perfect when we were together because it let me be home more with Amy, help her with college stuff, everything. All I worked for these past 5 years is just gone. Amy packed her stuff and disappeared over a week ago. I have no idea where she is, and her friends won't tell me anything. She tried contacting Mark multiple times, but he got a restraining order against her. She kept showing up at his office and his parents' house trying to apologize. When she violated the restraining order by waiting outside his work again, he had her arrested. I don't know what the hell she was thinking. She kept insisting she could fix everything but just made it all so much worse. His coworkers saw her getting arrested in the parking lot. Now there's no way his reputation at work can recover. She's gonna have to drop out of college now too. Mark retracted his promise to keep paying for her expenses. He sent me a message saying he's completely done with both of us. He said I didn't respect his wishes about leaving his house right away, and Amy went against the restraining order, so he's cutting us both off. He warned that if either of us keeps harassing him, he'll file a defamation case against Amy. His lawyer already sent a letter detailing all the damage her lies have caused. Lost work opportunities, therapy costs, reputation damage. She could end up owing him thousands if he decides to sue. I can barely afford to feed myself right now, let alone help Amy. When I told her she'd need to drop out and get a job, she packed up in the middle of the night and left, just like her father. When things get hard, she runs away. All she left was a note saying she was sorry for ruining everything and she needs time to figure herself out. Mark has become cold as ice these past few weeks. He'll only discuss divorce stuff through lawyers now. He said he would have helped me get on my feet, but it's obvious we just wanted to take advantage of his generosity, so he's done. He was going to void our prenup initially, but now he's sticking to it, which means I get basically nothing. I'm not even mad about that part. The prenup was my idea in the first place because I wanted him to know I wasn't after his money. I just didn't expect to end up here, starting over from scratch at 36. I don't want anything material from him. I just want my husband back. I want the kind, caring man who helped me believe in myself again after years of thinking I was worthless for getting pregnant young. I tried telling him Amy moved out and begging one more time to work on our marriage, but he didn't even respond. His last message was asking if I'd sign the divorce papers or hire a lawyer to review them. He said he wants to be done with this shit and move on because it's clear no one in my family, including me, ever really respected him. That killed me because it's not true. I respected and loved him more than anyone. I still do. He also told me to get my family to back off because they're still harassing him. Apparently, my brother Mike showed up at his parents' house drunk yelling about how Mark turned his family against him, or some stupid shit. Mark said he'll report them for harassment too if they don't stop. His parents are elderly and don't need this stress. His dad's heart condition has gotten worse from all this drama. My family is literally making a sick old man worse because they can't admit they effed up by spreading lies to everyone. Asking why I didn't do more when the lies first started. I tried everything. I got accused of protecting my creep husband instead of my daughter. The security video didn't help because it had no audio. Amy was still claiming she verbally answered and he walked in anyway. By the time she finally admitted the truth, the damage was already done. Those lies spread so fast online that even Mark's relatives in other states were calling to ask what happened. Now I've lost everything. My marriage is over, my daughter is gone. My family won't leave me alone. And I'm about to be homeless when my friend inevitably gets sick of her life being disrupted by my drama. The worst part is knowing this could have all been avoided if Amy had just told the truth from the beginning, or if she'd at least corrected things right away instead of letting the lie spread. but she was too worried about looking bad, and now multiple lives are ruined. I have no idea how to start over from here. I'm working shitty retail hours again, living on my friend's couch and barely making enough to cover basic needs. My daughter is hiding God knows where instead of facing the consequences of her actions. My soon-to-be ex-husband won't even look at me anymore, and my family is still trying to fix things by harassing everyone involved. At least Mark's lawyer said he won't press charges against Amy if everyone leaves him alone. That's the only small mercy in this whole effed-up situation. Now on to the next story. Story 6. I brought my husband to my sister's wedding after she told me not to. Her husband started spreading lies that my hubby was secretly in love with her, and my whole family believed him. My sister and I always had an up-and-down relationship. We loved each other, but we weren't the type of sisters who shared every thought or every secret. We'd had our moments, sure, occasional arguments, mostly over silly things or the way we saw family roles. But overall, I truly loved her. I've been proud of her achievements, supported her, and had stood by her through every life event so far. We'd had a pretty good relationship until this wedding mess. I've been married to Dan for almost 4 years, and he fits seamlessly into our family. Dan was the kind of guy who'd make an effort with the people I loved, and I admired that about him. Since he didn't have siblings, he treated my sister like his own, and they had a light-hearted bond that sometimes even reminded me of bickering siblings. They'd tease each other constantly, and he was even there for her when she needed help. About a year ago, she'd been struggling with a business venture. She wanted to start a small online jewelry shop, and Dan had offered her a loan to get her started, interest-free. It was a generous amount, and I'd been proud that he was willing to support her. So, when her wedding invitation arrived with that strange note asking me not to bring Dan, I was caught completely off guard. Felt like a slap in the face, considering how close they were. I went over the note at least 5 times, trying to figure out if it was a joke or if I'd missed some hidden message. Dan laughed it off at first, suggesting maybe she wanted to pull some sort of wedding prank on him, but something about it just didn't sit right with me. I tried to reach out to her directly, texting her a few casual questions about the wedding, but she was vague in her responses, saying she was busy with planning and would call later. Since I couldn't get a clear answer from her, I decided to call my mom. When I asked if she'd heard anything about Dan not being invited, she just chuckled and said something like, "Oh, you know how your sister is. She's just being her silly self." She thought that maybe my sister was planning something funny for the reception. Her reaction didn't help at all and only added to my confusion. My mom didn't seem to think it was serious, which led me to believe it really might just be a harmless prank. I was still unsure, but at that point I couldn't see why bringing him would cause any real harm. After all, this was a wedding. It was supposed to be a joyful occasion, a time for family to come together, not for weird restrictions and mind games. On the day of the wedding, we arrived at the venue together. As soon as we walked in, I noticed some people giving us odd looks. I tried to brush it off, focusing on the happiness of the day. I figured that perhaps they were just noticing us because Dan and I had dressed a bit more formally than usual, wanting to show respect for the big day. Then I spotted my sister. She was in the middle of a conversation with some of her bridesmaids, but as soon as her eyes landed on Dan, her entire expression changed. Her face fell then morphed into an expression of anger that was startling. She immediately marched over, her voice shaking with fury, as she asked me why Dan was there. She didn't try to keep her voice down. Everyone around us could hear the edge in her tone. The mood was tense, and I felt heat rise to my face, embarrassed by her reaction. I tried to pull her aside to talk privately, but she kept going, saying he wasn't supposed to be there and that I was disrespecting her wishes. In an attempt to calm her down, I reminded her that the note had felt like a joke and even Mom had thought so. I asked her to take a breath and tell me what the real issue was, but she wouldn't answer me directly. Instead, she started yelling louder, accusing me of trying to ruin her day. Her fiancé noticed the commotion and quickly stepped in. I figured he'd try to mediate, to calm her down, but instead, he took her side immediately, standing protectively beside her and glaring at Dan. Then, out of nowhere, he stepped forward and gave Dan a rough shove, telling him to leave right now. I was completely blindsided, The situation had spiraled so far beyond anything I'd expected, and I was torn between defending my husband and preserving what little peace might still exist with my family. But at that point, things had gone too far. With a broken heart, I took Dan's hand, and we left the venue. That night, I sat in disbelief. Dan was quiet, and though he didn't say it outright, I could tell he was devastated. We hadn't been trying to make a scene or upset anyone. We genuinely believed we were doing nothing wrong. I tried calling my mom and sister later that night, hoping to clear things up and apologize if there had been some unspoken boundary we'd crossed, but no one answered. 2 days later, Dan handed me his phone and told me to look at a post my sister's husband had made. I opened it to see a long, bitter rant where he mentioned degenerate people trying to disrupt our day, adding that some people were clearly obsessed with him and his wife. He never named us, but it was obvious who he was talking about. Seeing it laid out like that for the world to see felt like a betrayal. Here was this man, someone who should have been welcoming family, accusing us publicly of doing something malicious, all because we had dared to show up. It was humiliating and hurtful, and it left me feeling helpless. I tried to reach out to my sister and mom once again, hoping that maybe now, after the wedding stress was over, they'd be willing to talk, but my calls went unanswered. All I want to know is what exactly I had done wrong. Was I the bad person for assuming my husband would be welcomed? Should I have taken that note seriously, despite how ridiculous it had seemed? I thought I was respecting her by showing up, by being there for her on her big day, and yet everything I'd done seemed to have backfired. I confided in a few close friends, and they were as stunned as I was. They couldn't wrap their heads around why my sister and her husband would react so strongly. Then one friend suggested something that I hadn't considered, that maybe her husband was jealous of the relationship Dan had with her or felt threatened by his presence. It didn't make complete sense to me, but it was the only explanation that held some logic. Since that post, I haven't heard from my sister or her husband. My family seems divided, with some relatives reaching out to say they were sorry about what happened but avoiding taking sides. It's painful to know that my family has been pulled into this mess, all because I didn't think my sister's note was serious. Now I'm left questioning every decision, every interaction, wondering if I should have known better. The worst part is, I feel like I've lost not just my sister, but my entire sense of family unity. I never wanted to cause a scene or make her big day about anything other than her happiness. Now, though, all I'm left with are regrets and questions I may never have answered. So, Reddit, I'm left wondering, was I wrong for bringing Dan? Did I miss a warning sign I should have seen? Or was I right to think that family should be able to share in each other's lives without unspoken rules and unkind reactions? I feel lost and confused, and I don't know if I'll ever fully understand how something that started as a joyful occasion ended up this way. Update 1. Hi everyone. First of all, thank you so much for all your comments and support. I was honestly blown away by how many of you have had similar experiences, and it's comforting to know I'm not the only one going through something like this. Some of your stories have been eye-opening, and it's actually helped me make sense of the crazy events that have happened. Unfortunately, what I'm going through with my family right now is the complete opposite of healing or understanding. After the wedding, we didn't hear from anyone for days. It was like this weird silence, and I started to believe that maybe they just needed space. Dan and I both thought that they'd come around eventually, but then, out of nowhere, our phones started blowing up with text messages. It was like the floodgates had opened. Messages from family friends, even some people I hadn't spoken to in years, and they weren't reaching out to offer support or understanding. They were calling me everything from a home wrecker to a selfish brat who had ruined my sister's wedding day. Some of the messages were so hurtful and outlandish that I honestly thought they were jokes at first, but then I realized these people were serious. One message from a cousin said, "If you loved your sister, you wouldn't have pulled a stunt like that at her wedding." Another relative accused me of trying to sabotage the wedding because I was jealous of my sister's happiness. Apparently, her husband's social media post had created a ripple effect. In his post, he implied that I was obsessed with their relationship, which sent people into a frenzy, assuming the worst of me without even asking for my side. And to make things worse, he left hints that I had gone out of my way to humiliate them by showing up with Dan, even though I genuinely believed it was all just a misunderstanding. It got so bad that Dan's own family started hearing about it. They'd been friendly with my sister and were shocked at the way everything had turned. His mother even reached out to my mom to try and clear things up, only to be told that I'd made my bed and now had to lie in it. My mom's words, apparently. When Dan's mother told me this, I was devastated. My own mother was siding against me, siding with these awful lies that I'd schemed to upstage my sister on her big day. I also started noticing a strange trend in these messages from family members. Everyone seemed to believe this narrative that I was fixated on my sister's husband, that somehow I'd been trying to insert myself into their lives or had some hidden agenda. It sounded completely ridiculous, yet people who had known me my entire life seemed to buy into it. And all of this was so hurtful and bizarre because, as I explained before, my husband Dan had been like a brother to my sister. They'd always had that sibling bond, nothing more. Yet now people were making it sound like I'd intentionally used Dan to hurt her. My sister, meanwhile, still hadn't reached out. She was ghosting me completely, letting her new husband do the talking indirectly through his nasty post and letting our family tear me apart. In desperation, I tried reaching out to her best friend, hoping she might have some insight. Her friend told me she couldn't say much but did mention that my sister had been dealing with pre-wedding nerves and that she'd been influenced a lot by her fiancé's view of family dynamics. Apparently, he has a history of being possessive and even had issues with some of her other friends leading up to the wedding. That little piece of information got my mind racing. What if he was intentionally trying to cut her off from her family, starting with me? A few days later, my worst suspicions were confirmed. In the cruelest way possible, a relative who's always been one to stir the pot sent me a screenshot of another post from my sister's husband. This time, he went even further, saying outright that he was grateful to finally be free of certain toxic family members who had been trying to control his new wife. He implied that Dan and I had been part of some vendetta against them and that he'd been forced to defend his wife from our antics. Couldn't believe it. Not only was he spreading these lies, but now he was making it sound like we had a long history of being toxic toward my sister. It was horrifying and humiliating, and what's worse, people were eating it up. By now, all of this had reached mutual friends who had nothing to do with the family, and I was starting to feel isolated in my own community. Even in the face of all of this backlash, I couldn't let it go. I had this burning need to confront my sister, to hear from her directly what she thought of everything that was being said about me. So I called her one last time. She didn't pick up, but a few hours later, I received a text from her. A brief message that read, "You crossed a line. You can't come back from this. I hope you're happy with the choices you made." That text felt like the end of our relationship. I was stunned and heartbroken, trying to make sense of how things had fallen apart so fast. Part of me wanted to go on social media to put my side of the story out there and defend myself against these horrible accusations. But Dan urged me to stay quiet, reminding me that it would only fuel the fire. And as much as it hurt, I knew he was right. If I started defending myself online, I'd only look guilty, like I had something to hide. But it wasn't just about me at this point. Dan was caught in the middle of this mess too. He told me he'd been contacted by his own friends, some who had seen the post, asking why he'd stooped to that level by even showing up. People who had no idea about the note or the context had already painted him as some kind of disruptive figure. It's hard to describe the mix of anger, betrayal, and sadness I feel. My husband has been nothing but kind to my sister, and now he's being dragged through the mud. And as much as I wish I could turn back time and never go to that wedding, a part of me feels like this would have happened eventually. It's clear now that her husband was intent on isolating her, and it seems I was just the first in line to be cut off. In a way, I feel like I've lost not just my sister but my whole family because of one misunderstanding blown out of proportion. I'm now the home wrecker, the toxic family member, the one who's supposedly obsessed with disrupting other people's happiness. And all I did was show up to support my sister on her wedding day. Update 2. A lot has been happening that I had no idea about until recently, and after a heated conversation with my mom, I'm beginning to see the whole situation in a new, disturbing light. I decided to visit her because I couldn't let things keep spiraling without at least trying to talk it out. I wanted to clear up the air and find out why my family was so easily swayed by these hurtful rumors. When I got there, my mom seemed defensive, repeating the same things that relatives had been saying. That I was attention-seeking and making a scene at the wedding, even calling me a homewrecker for causing drama in my sister's new marriage. It was the same laundry list of accusations that had been thrown at me for weeks. But then she said something that stopped me in my tracks. "You should have handled things better, especially given how your husband feels about your sister." I was stunned. What was she talking about? I asked my mom to explain what she meant by my husband's feelings for her. My mom's expression didn't change, and it felt like my heart had dropped into my stomach. She started explaining, almost nonchalantly, how my sister had been concerned about Dan's feelings and how that concern had escalated after her engagement. It turns out that when my sister got engaged to Trent, she shared with him the relationship she shared with Dan, which we all saw as a sibling-like bond. But Trent, as I learned through my mom's words, saw things differently. He apparently convinced her that Dan was attracted to her and couldn't be trusted. According to Trent, my husband was infatuated with my sister, and he didn't want someone in love with his bride attending their wedding. When I asked my mom why she would even entertain such a ridiculous idea, she shrugged and told me that sometimes people hide their feelings well, implying that my husband had somehow been hiding some secret love for my sister all these years. It was absurd. I wanted to laugh, but instead, I was seething with anger. The brother-sister relationship Dan and my sister had always had was suddenly being painted as something twisted and inappropriate by Trent's jealous paranoia. And it wasn't just Trent's idea. My sister and even my mom had been swayed by this theory. I sat there shaking, asking my mom how she could possibly believe that Dan, who had treated my sister with nothing but kindness, would have some hidden agenda. She said she had seen signs that she'd never noticed before, like the times he'd loaned her money or how he'd be quick to come to her rescue if she needed help. I couldn't believe that basic acts of kindness were now being twisted into something sordid. My mom didn't stop there. She went on to tell me that when my sister first voiced her concerns about Dan, she tried to protect her by keeping her distance from Dan. Apparently, Trent had told her that Dan was obsessed and would always be a threat to their relationship. Trent had even encouraged her to put distance between herself and me, saying that I was enabling Dan's supposed obsession by always bringing him around. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was as if Trent had been planting seeds of doubt in my sister's mind, reshaping her perception of Dan and, by extension, me. He created this narrative where Dan and I were both trying to sabotage their happiness, and it was working. I tried to reason with my mom, telling her that none of this made sense, that Dan had no reason to be in love with my sister, and that we'd all been close without any issues before Trent showed up. But she wouldn't listen. She insisted that Trent sees things others don't, and that he was only trying to protect my sister. I left her house that day feeling more hurt than ever. Not only had Trent's jealousy fractured my relationship with my sister, but it had also brainwashed my own mother. After that, I went home and told Dan everything. He was speechless. He couldn't believe that the sister-like relationship he had with her had somehow become this twisted narrative. He recalled every instance he'd helped her, times he thought he was just being a supportive brother-in-law, and how those memories now felt tainted. He was frustrated, trying to process how a man he barely knew had managed to turn my family against us using jealousy as his weapon. Later on, I texted my parents, letting them know they could believe whatever they wanted, but that I had already explained my side and stood by it. I told them my Dan was being accused of something completely untrue, and that if there had been any truth to it, I'd have been the first to address it. They needed to understand that I wouldn't be standing by him just because he's my husband. I would never support anything so wrong if it were true. I went on to say that these allegations were beyond absurd and incredibly hurtful, and that it said a lot about them that they'd chosen to side with their new son-in-law without any real evidence or even giving Dan or me the benefit of the doubt. It's one thing to support your children, but this believing Trent's story with no proof and turning against their own family like this was a step too far. Dan and I didn't have the time or energy for such nonsense, and I wasn't going to stand by and let this ridiculous, baseless drama keep dragging us down. I let them know that if they wanted to believe in something so absurd, then that was their choice, but we weren't interested in being part of this toxic circus anymore. So for now, we're waiting to see if they'll come around or keep choosing this false narrative over us. Honestly, I have no idea what will happen next. Update 3. Hey everyone, things have actually taken a surprising turn for the better, though it's still hard to process everything that's happened. After I sent that message to my parents, it seemed to shake them up a bit. I think they finally started to realize how twisted and out of character all these accusations were. They took it upon themselves to reach out to some of our relatives and talk through everything that had happened. I'm not entirely sure what was said in those conversations, but whatever it was, it must have made them realize just how bizarre and unfounded Trent's claims were. Since then, I've received apologies from a lot of family members like cousins, aunts, and uncles. Some even expressed regret for jumping to conclusions without talking to me first. As much as I appreciate them acknowledging their mistake, it still stings. I don't like that so many of them were willing to believe such a ridiculous story. The idea that they thought Dan was acting inappropriately all along, especially with someone he thought of as his sister, hurts. I'm glad they're coming around, but I can't pretend it doesn't leave me with a bitter feeling. But all of that faded into the background last night because something even more unexpected happened. My sister showed up at my house, completely out of the blue. She looked like she'd been through a lot. Her hair was a mess, her eyes were red from crying, and it seemed like she hadn't slept. Despite everything, she's my sister, and seeing her like that broke my heart. I opened the door and let her in, figuring we could talk and maybe get to the bottom of things. As soon as she sat down, she started crying. Once she calmed down a bit, she began explaining what had happened with Trent. She told me that she and Trent had just had a huge argument, one that made her see things from a new perspective. Through her tears, she admitted that Dan wasn't the first person Trent had accused of being interested in her. Apparently, this had been going on for a while. At first, Trent's behavior seemed harmless, maybe even flattering in a strange way. She said it started when they were out in public and Trent would notice random men supposedly staring at her. He'd make little comments about how other guys were checking her out or eyeing her inappropriately. And while it felt a bit strange, she thought it was just him being protective. Over time, though, his behavior escalated. His accusations started coming up in almost every situation, and eventually his focus shifted to people in her life, especially Dan. When he began talking about Dan, he was extremely convincing. Trent made it sound like he was genuinely worried, like he was just looking out for her and wanted to keep her safe from anything uncomfortable. He kept bringing it up and she trusted him, so she went along with it. That's why when he insisted Dan shouldn't come to the wedding, she didn't question it. She thought she was doing the right thing by listening to her fiancé's concerns and respecting his wishes. But after their wedding, things spiraled further. Trent had started accusing even more people of having feelings for her, and it was no longer just a comment here and there. He'd now begun pushing her to quit her job, saying one of her male coworkers had eyes for her, and it wasn't safe for her to be around him. She realized then that this wasn't normal at all. Trent was pushing her to give up her independence and cut people out of her life, isolating her. It was no longer just about Dan or random strangers. It was about controlling who she was and who she had around her. She felt blindsided, manipulated, and betrayed as she finally saw that his so-called protectiveness was really just obsessive and manipulative behavior. She realized that she'd been trapped in his controlling behavior and admitted she felt like a fool for not seeing it sooner. My sister was clearly heartbroken and ashamed of how she had treated us. She apologized to me, and I could see the regret in her eyes as she apologized to Dan as well. She explained how she'd let her trust in Trent convince her to go along with everything he said and that she'd made a huge mistake. For the first time, I could see how hurt she was by what she'd done, and I knew she genuinely regretted it. Right now, she's staying with us to have some space and figure out what to do next. I know this is an incredibly hard time for her, and it's painful to watch her go through this. But at the same time, I feel a deep sense of relief that the truth is finally out. My husband no longer has to bear the weight of false accusations, and my family can see Trent's behavior for what it really is. Whatever comes next, I'm ready to be there for my sister. I'm still processing everything, but I'm grateful that in the end, the truth has come to light and we're on the path to moving forward. Update 4. Hey everyone. I know a lot of you asked for an update, so I'm sorry for going quiet. It's been a busy, emotional couple of months, and so much has changed. Last time, I shared how my sister came over to my place, finally realizing how controlling Trent was. She returned to him, determined to keep her job and not let him push her around anymore. When she told him, though, he completely spiraled. He accused her of being unfaithful, saying that if she wanted to keep working, she must be interested in other men. His reaction was so intense and unhinged that she ended up leaving again and came straight back to me, more devastated than ever. It was heart-wrenching to see her go through this, but it also seemed to bring her some clarity. Over the next week, we talked a lot, and she began to accept that this was no longer a relationship she wanted to be in. She came to the painful decision to end things and file for divorce. As expected, Trent did not take it well. He showed up at my place, pleading and crying, promising he'd change and never act this way again. It was tough to watch, especially since he seemed genuinely remorseful, but my sister stood her ground. She realized that his behavior had crossed so many lines, and there was no going back to a place of trust. So, in short, my sister is going through a divorce now. It's a difficult time for her, but I'm doing my best to be there for her. Dan has been keeping his distance a bit, which I understand. Everything that went down has put a strain on their relationship, but he's still supportive and checks in on her because he knows she needs all the support she can get right now. My parents have also really stepped up. They've been helping her with the legal stuff and providing her with emotional support, which has made a huge difference. They've also taken this chance to apologize to both Dan and me, especially to Dan, for ever believing Trent's accusations. It's like they finally realized just how off-base everything was. Honestly, it's been an intense journey, but I feel grateful for the clarity that came out of it. My sister is in a better place, even though it's hard, and my family has become closer in some ways. I want to thank everyone here for your encouragement and support. It was reassuring to read your comments, reminding us to stay strong and believe in ourselves. Thank you all so much for being here through this. Now on to the next story. Story 7. Wife turned my entire family against me and kept my daughter away for years after our divorce. Now she reached me as an adult, and I told her the real story about her mother. This story is one I never thought I would share publicly, but after everything that has happened, I need to get it off my chest. The past few weeks have been nothing short of a roller coaster. Maybe someone out there can help me understand if I'm truly the bad guy in all this. I, 48M, have been through a whirlwind of emotions and events over the past decade, and it's all come to a head in a way I never expected. It all started many years ago when I married Laura, the mother of my daughter, Emily. Laura and I were high school sweethearts, and at first, our love seemed unbreakable. We were young, full of dreams, and ready to take on the world together. But life has a way of unraveling even the strongest bonds, and it wasn't long before the cracks in our relationship began to show. Laura came from a well-off family, accustomed to a life of luxury, while I grew up in a more modest household. Despite our differences, I loved her deeply and tried my best to provide for her in the way she was used to. But no matter how hard I tried, it was never enough. The pressures of trying to keep up with Laura's expectations weighed heavily on me, and our marriage began to suffer. Our relationship became increasingly strained, and the arguments became more frequent. I noticed that Laura seemed distant, as if her mind was elsewhere. I tried to reach out to understand what was wrong, but she always brushed me off, claiming that everything was fine. It was only later, during the divorce proceedings, that I learned the heartbreaking truth. Laura had been unfaithful to me multiple times throughout our marriage. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. All those nights I spent working late to provide for our family, all the sacrifices I made to keep our marriage afloat, and she had been betraying me all along. Despite the pain and betrayal, my top priority was our daughter, Emily. She was just 11 years old at the time, and I wanted to do everything in my power to be there for her. But that hope also shattered during the divorce settlement. Laura was determined to paint me as the villain in our story. She accused me of being emotionally distant and neglectful, and even hinted at potential abuse, none of which was true. But Laura was convincing, and she managed to turn my own family against me, including my parents and siblings. They all bought into her story, believing that I must have done something terrible to drive her to infidelity. It felt like I was stranded on an island with no one willing to hear me out. The court battle was brutal, and despite my best efforts, the judge sided with Laura. She was awarded full custody of Emily, and I was granted limited visitation rights. But even those few opportunities to see my daughter were sabotaged by Laura. She would often forget about scheduled visits or claim that Emily was sick or had other plans. I would offer to take Emily to school or help her with projects, but Laura refused to let me play any meaningful role in her life. My family, who had always been close to Emily, sided with Laura and helped her keep my daughter away from me. They were also determined to erase me from Emily's life, and I was powerless to stop it. The years that followed were some of the most painful of my life. It started subtly at first. Emily would be hesitant to visit me, preferring to stay with her mom. And while it hurt, I tried to understand. After all, kids often prefer one parent over the other, right? But soon it became clear that something more malicious was at play. Emily would come to our visits with a list of grievances, things I supposedly did or said that painted me as the bad guy. I was confused because none of it was true. When I tried to talk to Laura about it, she would dismiss my concerns or twist the conversation to make it seem like I was just being paranoid or overacting. Over the years, I tried to maintain a relationship with Emily, but it became increasingly difficult. Phone calls went unanswered, letters were returned unopened, and my attempts to see her were met with hostility from Laura and my family. Let's just say that they all seemed determined to erase me from Emily's life. The worst part came when Emily was around 13. She told me outright that she didn't want to see me anymore. She said it so coldly, as if I meant nothing to her. I was devastated. I knew that Laura had been feeding her lies, but I didn't have the heart to drag Emily through a messy legal battle. After all, she did want to stay with her mom, and if at that point I pulled her away from her mother, it would just make matters worse. I didn't want to be the cause of more conflict in her life, so I reluctantly agreed to step back. It was one of the hardest decisions I've ever made. I kept hoping that one day she'd realize the truth and come back to me. But that day didn't come for a long, long time. Years later, I slowly but steadily moved on from that traumatic period of my life. I met Megan, and there was an instant spark between us. But because of my past experiences, we took our time to get to know each other, and then got married some time ago. Megan had 2 kids of her own, so most of my time was spent with them, and we built a life together. While I loved my new family, there was always a part of me that wondered about Emily. How was she doing? What had she become? I reached out to Laura a few times over the years to ask about Emily, but she never replied. I tried to convince myself that Emily was better off without me, but deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had abandoned her. And then one day, out of the blue, Emily reached out to me. She was 20 years old now, and her message was short and simple. She wanted to meet and talk. She said there were things she needed to understand about our family, about why I wasn't there for her. My heart skipped a beat when I read her message. The thought of seeing her after all this time was scary, but I was not going to miss a chance to see my daughter. I was nervous, but also hopeful. Maybe this was the moment I had been waiting for all these years. We agreed to meet at a quiet cafe. I was a bundle of nerves as I waited for her to arrive. When she finally walked in, I hardly recognized her. She had grown into a beautiful young woman, but the anger and hurt in her eyes were unmistakable. It was clear that she had been carrying a lot of pain for a long time, and as we sat down across from each other, the tension was palpable. Emily didn't waste any time getting to the point. She wanted answers, answers that I knew would be hard to hear. I took a deep breath and began to tell her the truth. I didn't hold back. I told her everything. How her mother and her family had systematically poisoned her against me, how they had twisted every situation to make me look like the bad guy, and how I had tried so hard to be a part of her life despite everything. I told her about Laura's infidelities and the lies she had spread during the divorce. For the next few hours, I laid out the reality of what had happened. I had brought with me old court documents, text messages, and emails that supported my story. I wanted Emily to know that I understood what she had been told about me this whole time, and I wasn't the monster she had been led to believe. Emily sat in stunned silence as I revealed the reality of what had happened. She had grown up believing that I was the one who had walked away, that I hadn't cared enough to be part of her life. Learning the truth was overwhelming for her. I could see her processing everything, and I didn't push her to respond. I knew this was a lot for her to take in. When she finally spoke, her voice was trembling. She asked me why I never fought back, why I didn't try harder to stay in her life. That question broke me. I had to explain that I didn't want to put her in the middle of a legal battle and that I thought stepping back was the best way to protect her. I wanted her to have a happy childhood, even if it meant she would hate me for a while. But the truth was, I regretted not fighting harder. I regretted letting Laura and her family control the narrative. And now it seemed that Emily was beginning to understand the depth of what had happened. She was furious, a little at me, but mostly at her mother. She couldn't believe the lengths Laura had gone to just to make herself look like the better parent. Emily decided that she needed to take action. She said she wanted to confront her mother and lay everything out for everyone. I was shocked, but also proud of her for standing up for herself. Emily wasn't the little girl I had known a decade ago. She was a strong woman, capable of defending herself. At the same time, I was worried about the toll this would take on her. I took a sigh of relief when she said that she wasn't sure how to move forward with our relationship, as she had gotten so used to an absent father, but she would love it if we could meet and chat more. 2 days later, I received a flurry of angry calls and messages from Laura. Apparently, Emily had confronted her with the information I had shared. Laura was furious, accusing me of turning Emily against her and destroying their relationship. What I didn't expect was Emily's next move. She called me yesterday to inform me that she's planning to take Laura to court for parental alienation. She wants to sue for the emotional damage caused by years of lies and manipulation. Now Laura won't stop calling me. She's alternating between threats and pleas, demanding that I talk Emily out of the lawsuit. My family is also reaching out, suddenly wanting to reconnect and smooth things over. I'm at a loss. On one hand, I'm relieved that Emily finally knows the truth. On the other hand, I never intended for things to escalate to this point. At this point in my life, along with Emily, I also have Megan and kids to take care of, and I'm not sure if I can take the same mental pressure again. I don't want to cause more pain or drama, but I also feel that Laura and my family need to face the consequences of their actions. In short, I've been very conflicted. I am proud of Emily for seeking the truth and for wanting to take a stand against what had been done to her. But I was also scared for her. The legal process is brutal, especially when it involves family, and I didn't want her to get hurt more than she already had been. I tried to support her from a distance, giving her the space to make her own decisions while letting her know that I was there for her whenever she needed me. And I cannot even describe the emotional pressure that I am facing from Laura and my family. All of this is making me question if I was wrong for telling my daughter the truth about her mother and our past, even though it's led to this complicated situation. Your comments and suggestions would be really helpful. Update 1. Hey guys, things have taken a turn for the worse, which was honestly very expected. Expected because any confrontation with Laura couldn't be an easy one, because she had zero regard for anyone around her. I just didn't know if that also included our daughter. After Emily's altercation with her mother, she came to our place, her eyes red from crying. This time, she didn't hold back. She laid everything out, every painful detail of what her life had been like over the past 8 years. Laura may have won custody, but it was clear that she had no idea how to be a mother, let alone care for a child. Emily described how half of the time Laura wasn't even home. She'd be out sometimes for days on end, leaving Emily alone to fend for herself. The other half of the time, when Laura was home, she was drunk and erratic. Emily spoke of the nights when Laura would come home in a rage, throwing things, yelling, and sometimes even blaming Emily for her own failures and frustrations. My heart broke as she recounted these moments, the fear she must have felt, the loneliness. But the worst was yet to come. Emily told us about 2 incidents that still haunted her. The first time, she was 13 and Laura had left her alone for the weekend without any food or money. Emily tried to cook something for herself, but she ended up burning her hand severely. She was in so much pain, but when she tried calling Laura, she didn't pick up. So Emily, just a child, had to walk to the nearest hospital, her hand wrapped in a towel. She waited for hours in the ER, alone, scared, and in pain, until a nurse finally noticed her and helped her. Emily showed me the scar on her hand, a permanent reminder of her mother's neglect. The second time was even worse. She was 15, and Laura had been on a drinking binge for weeks. Emily tried to avoid her as much as possible, but one night Laura got violent. She threw a glass at Emily in a fit of rage, and it shattered against her leg, cutting her deeply. Emily was bleeding and in shock, but instead of helping her, Laura screamed at her to clean up the mess. Emily, terrified, wrapped her leg in an old shirt and once again made her way to the hospital, where she ended up needing stitches. As Emily recounted these stories, I felt a mix of anger and sorrow that I hadn't felt in years. Anger at Laura for putting our daughter through this nightmare, and sorrow for all the pain Emily had endured. She was just a kid, and she didn't deserve any of this. She didn't deserve to be left alone, injured, and scared. She didn't deserve to be treated like a burden by the one person who was supposed to protect her. This was literally a case of physical and mental abuse. I found it ironic that the thing she accused me of to take away my daughter from me became one of her everyday habits. And all of this could have been avoided if Laura had just let me take care of my daughter, if she hadn't been so consumed by her own selfishness and spite. Emily could have had a normal, happy childhood. Megan and I spent the whole night listening to Emily. We made sure she felt at home, that she knew she was safe now. Megan was especially comforting, holding Emily's hand and reassuring her that none of this was her fault. I could see how much it meant to Emily to have someone to comfort her, to tell her that she was loved and that she mattered. Then, in a moment that was both heartbreaking and bittersweet, Emily apologized to me. She didn't need to. She had nothing to apologize for, but she did. She said she was sorry for believing all the lies her mother had told her, for pushing me away, for not seeing the truth sooner. Her voice cracked as she told me that she had missed me so much all these years, that she had often wondered what life would have been like if she had lived with me instead. I told her how much I had missed her too, how I had never stopped thinking about her, never stopped loving her. And she did not need to apologize to me about anything because she was just a victim in Laura's games. It was a bittersweet moment because while it was painful to hear her apologies, it also meant that we were finally reconnecting after all these years of being apart. This was also a realization for me that I was done playing safe and avoiding family drama. My daughter's well-being was at stake here, and I was going to get the apology and reparation that she deserved, even if that meant getting into a legal battle with my ex-wife. The next morning, after a long night of talking and comforting Emily, and I cooked up a plan. We were going to confront my family about everything. Every lie, every act of neglect, everything that Emily had been put through. I was done with them pretending like they were the perfect family while they had enabled Laura to destroy Emily's childhood. We had the proof we needed. The hospital records, the text messages, and even some old voicemails from Laura that Emily had saved. It was time to expose the truth, to let them know exactly what their complicity had cost. I could see that Emily was nervous, but there was also a resolve in her eyes that I hadn't seen before. She was ready to face them, to stand up for herself, and I was going to be right there beside her. We were finally going to get the justice we both deserved, and I knew that no matter what happened, we would face it together. Whatever happens, you guys will be the first to know. Thank you for understanding my situation and sending helpful comments. It means a lot. I'll be back with updates because this is definitely not the end. Update 2. Hello, people. Hope you all are doing great. Remember about the family confrontation that Emily and I had planned? Well, that happened and it was definitely eventful. My daughter and I decided to pay a surprise visit, and the moment we walked through the door, I could see the surprise on their faces. It was as if they couldn't quite process the sight of us together, united after all these years. They had never expected this, never anticipated that the years of distance, manipulation, and lies could be undone so swiftly. But here we were, standing side by side, ready to confront them. The initial shock wore off quickly, and they scrambled to put on their usual facade of concern. My mother was the first to speak, her voice dripping with false worry as she asked Emily if I had hurt her or done something to upset her. The insinuation stung, not because I cared what they thought of me, but because it showed just how deeply they had bought into Laura's narrative. To think that I would harm my own daughter, it was a sickening thought, but one they seemed to hold without question. They were quick to believe the worst of me, perhaps because it made it easier for them to justify their own actions. But I wasn't Laura, and Emily was no longer the scared, confused child they once knew. Before I could respond, Emily stepped forward. Her voice was steady, filled with a quiet strength that made me proud. She told them to drop the act, to stop pretending that they cared when they had done nothing to help her over the years. There was no hesitation, no wavering in her words. She called them out for their apathy, for standing by while Laura neglected and hurt her, and for being complicit in the destruction of her childhood. I watched as my parents and siblings tried to mask their discomfort. Their expressions shifted from feigned concern to something closer to annoyance. They didn't like being confronted, especially not by Emily, who they still saw as a child, someone who should be grateful for whatever scraps of attention they had thrown her way. But Emily wasn't a child anymore, and she wasn't interested in their hollow apologies or excuses. I saw some comments asking how Laura set my own family against me so easily. Well, our relationship had always been complicated, tangled in years of unresolved issues and buried resentment. My siblings and I had never been close. There was always a sense of competition, of one-upmanship that poisoned any chance of a genuine bond. My parents, instead of fostering unity, had taken sides, aligning themselves with whichever child was most useful to them at the time. When Laura had come to them with the idea of divorcing me, they saw it as an opportunity, a way to channel their lingering resentment towards me. They hadn't cared about the impact it would have on Emily or me. They were more interested in settling old scores, in seeing me brought down a peg. As Emily laid out everything that had happened, how Laura had abandoned her, how she had suffered injuries and trauma while they turned a blind eye, I could see the discomfort growing on their faces. They weren't used to being challenged like this, especially not by someone they had underestimated for so long. And it wasn't just the words that stung. It was the fact that Emily was holding them accountable, refusing to let them off the hook with their usual platitudes. Of course, we didn't reveal everything we had. There was no need to show all our cards at once. We had hospital records, text messages, and other evidence that could easily tear apart their carefully constructed narrative. But for now, we kept most of it close, only revealing enough to make it clear that we were serious, that this wasn't just some emotional outburst. This was a warning, a declaration that we were done playing by their rules, and things were about to get a whole lot more serious. We left the house without waiting for any response. There was nothing they could say that would change anything, nothing that would undo the years of pain and neglect they had allowed to happen. As we walked away, Emily delivered one final message. She told them to pass it on to Laura, to let her know that we were coming with a very hefty case and that she better be ready for it. The silence that followed us as we left was deafening. But it was a silence filled with unspoken words, with the weight of what was to come. Emily and I had drawn our line in the sand, and there was no turning back. The family had always thrived on division, on keeping us isolated and at odds with each other. But now, with Emily and me standing together, they were the ones who were going to have to face the consequences. All of you have given me some of the best advice, and know that I'm constantly going through each and every comment. Your support means a lot. Update 3. Hello. I want to thank everyone who has followed the story and offered support and advice. The past few days have been some of the most challenging of my life, but I think we're finally seeing a way forward, so buckle up for a lengthy one. After the incident at my family's place, I immediately contacted one of our lawyers. I wasn't about to let Laura get away with everything she had done, not just to me, but to Emily as well. But when I brought up the idea of pursuing legal action, Emily surprised me. She didn't want to move forward with any legalities. It wasn't that she didn't care or that she was forgiving her mother. Far from it. Emily had just been through so much, and she had other priorities now. Her academic life was thriving, and she had big plans for her future. She couldn't afford to put that on hold to sue her mom and fight a court case. As her dad, I was so proud of her. After everything she had endured, she was still such a smart, resilient young woman with great career prospects ahead of her. But I also couldn't help but feel conflicted. A part of me wanted Laura to suffer for her actions, to face the consequences of the pain she had caused. It was one thing to mess up my life, but to harm Emily, to rob her of a normal, happy childhood, that was something I found unforgivable. However, I respected Emily's wishes. Unlike at her mom's, her opinion mattered here, and that was something I would always keep in mind when making decisions. As we were navigating through all of this, something else also happened. A day or two later, one of Laura's neighbors showed up at our doorstep with an envelope. The neighbor explained that Laura was leaving town for a while and had asked her to deliver the envelope to us. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I took the envelope and thanked the neighbor. Inside the envelope was a letter from Laura. It was long, filled with apologies and explanations, attempts to justify her actions. She wrote about how she became very alone after I left, how she lost her job, and how things spiraled downhill from there. She eventually found another job, but it paid poorly, and she sank deeper into depression. Drinking became her way of coping, and she claimed that she never meant to hurt Emily, that she was just so lost and overwhelmed by her own misery. Laura went on to detail more of her struggles, trying to paint a picture of a woman pushed to the brink by circumstances beyond her control. But as I read, all I could think was how hollow it all sounded. It was clear that Laura was trying to excuse her behavior, to make it seem like she was a victim of her own life. But no amount of hardship could justify the way she had treated Emily. She ended the letter by begging us not to pursue a legal battle. She promised to stay away from Emily as a gesture of goodwill and offered to pay whatever amount we thought was right as reparation for the damage she had caused. When I handed the letter to Emily, I could see the heartbreak in her eyes as she read it. This wasn't the apology she had wanted, and it certainly wasn't the resolution she deserved. What kind of mother leaves her child like this and then thinks that money could somehow make up for all the years of pain and neglect? It was a crushing realization for Emily, and I knew she needed time to process everything. I gave Emily space, understanding she'd reach out to Megan or me when she was ready. My wife Megan had quickly become a source of comfort for Emily, someone she could confide in without judgment. Emily soon became like family to all of us, forming a close bond with Megan's children. While I wanted to help, I realized Emily benefited more from Megan's support and perspective to process everything. After a while, Emily came to me with her decision. She didn't want to pursue a legal case. She didn't want to drag this out any longer or get bogged down in a bitter court battle. She wanted to start fresh, to focus on herself and her future, free from the shadows of the past. Emily was ready to move on, and as much as I wanted justice for her, I knew that this was the right choice. She had spent enough time living under the weight of her mother's mistakes. It was time for her to live her life on her own terms. Emily's decision marked the beginning of a new chapter for us. She started focusing more on her studies, channeling her energy into her goals and aspirations. Megan and I continued to support her in every way we could, offering guidance and encouragement as she navigated this new phase of her life. As for me, this feels like a dream. I have 3 kids and an amazing wife by my side, and things couldn't have ended on a better note. The journey had been long and painful, but in the end, we had found our way back to each other. And that, more than anything, was the true victory in all of this. Thank you all again for your support. It's been a wild ride, but I think we're finally on a path towards healing. Bye. Now on to the next story. Story 8. Dad chose brother's camping trip over my wedding, so I had stepdad walk me down the aisle. He showed up crying after seeing the photos and is now begging for a second ceremony. So, yesterday I got married, and in the evening, after everything was over, my dad finally showed up. We exchanged words, which made him cry, and now I feel awful because of that. For some context, my fiancé and I got engaged about 5 months ago, and since neither of us wanted a huge wedding with a lot of people in a massive venue, we decided to get married in our backyard with just our family and friends. Since we wanted to keep the wedding as private, small, and intimate as we could, we have been together for 4 years, and this was a really special day since we were getting married on the day of our 4th anniversary together. So, even though it was a small wedding, it was obviously still not feasible to reschedule it because we still had decorators and caterers coming in, and that's why I could not entertain my dad's request to postpone it. More than a matter of couldn't, it was mostly because I did not want to, because I did not think it was important to do such a thing. It wasn't like my dad was asking me to reschedule my wedding for something important. He wanted me to postpone it because my golden child brother was in town and had organized a camping trip for the same weekend. Yeah, I'm not even making it up, and I don't think I would have ever been able to make something as ludicrous as this. Anyway, last week my dad called me up and told me that he wouldn't be able to make it to my wedding if I had it this weekend because he had a medical emergency. It was a very lame excuse because I couldn't think of a single medical emergency that would require him to wait for a week and could not be rescheduled. So, I pushed him until he finally told me the truth, and he confessed that he had agreed to go on a camping trip that my brother had surprised him with, but unfortunately, it coincided with the dates of my wedding. I think it's pretty obvious what the choice should have been, but for my dad, the camping trip was the highest priority since my brother comes back home only for a couple of weeks every year, and my dad does not want to lose out on spending any time with him while he's here. He tried to tell me that rescheduling my wedding was going to be easy because it wasn't like I was having a huge wedding in the first place. I just had to tell a couple of people that I had rescheduled it and speak to the vendors, and that's it. I tried to explain to him that the date that we were getting married on was really important to me, but after talking to him for a while, I kind of knew that it was pointless because he had already made up his mind and was going to go on the camping trip with my brother. It did not come to me as a surprise that he had chosen my brother because, honestly, he has always been the golden child. My brother, 30M, is 3 years older than me and has always been an overachiever, while I've just been an ordinary kid. So, naturally, he got a lot of attention from everyone, and he was always praised while I kind of got overlooked. I used to feel really jealous of him, and I wanted to be happy for my brother, but I just couldn't because he was such a brat with a huge, overinflated ego. He knew that he was pretty great at a lot of things, and I guess all the attention that he had always received made him pretty arrogant, and he really thought that he was God's gift to mankind. In short, he was insufferable and was also a bit of a bully to me, so we never got along, and I was glad to see the back of him when he left for college. Our parents got divorced when I was in middle school, and it happened because my mother ended up having an affair with one of her friends from college. The divorce was really nasty and left everyone feeling really bitter about it, but thankfully, my dad agreed to a shared custody arrangement with my mom in spite of everything. If I can be frank, I would say that the divorce was something that everyone had seen coming. The only thing that had been a surprise was the fact that my mother had ended up having an affair, but nobody was shocked that my parents were getting divorced because for as long as I can remember, they had always been fighting. None of my childhood memories, even the happy ones, have my parents being happy together. When we were out amongst other people or during vacations or holidays, they would put on a happy face for the sake of the family, but that was just for show. There were weeks when they would hardly even speak to each other or look at each other, and they even slept in different rooms. I'm pretty sure that after a certain point in time, my parents had fallen out of love with each other and were just staying together for the sake of it, and neither of them did anything to fix that. So my mom ended up having an affair, and I'm not trying to defend her, but my dad had never been an easy guy to live with because during the time that she had an affair, he had been going through a particularly rough patch in their marriage where they were fighting viciously almost every day and had started hitting the bottles, which seemed to make the fights even worse. One day my mom finally told him the truth about her affair and left the house, but she still stayed in touch with her kids, or at least she tried to stay in touch with both of us. I was the only one who would respond to her messages while my brother ignored her because he never was able to truly bring himself to forgive her for cheating on our dad. It was quite expected that he wouldn't be able to forgive her because my dad and my brother had always had a very special bond right from when we were little. It was very obvious to me that my dad had a favorite, and even though he insisted that he didn't, his behavior made it very obvious. As we grew up, my relationship with my dad was strained at best, and after the divorce, when I decided to maintain a cordial relationship with my mom and my stepdad, I guess he started to resent me because he was very distant from me afterward. I think he had wanted me to behave the same way that my brother had been, constantly bad-mouthing our mother and her husband. My mom got married to my stepdad a couple of months after the divorce was finalized, and I was a bridesmaid at her wedding, while my brother refused to even attend. But she still had partial custody of us, so whether my brother liked it or not, he would be forced to spend half the month with our mother. He would be intolerable during those couple of weeks, especially because my mother did not play favorites with us, and I guess that did not sit right with him because he couldn't get away with his terrible behavior. Several times my dad even tried to file for full custody because he believed that my mother and her husband were tormenting his son, but his claims had no weight, so he failed to get custody of us. And I'm glad because at least with my mother, I had one parent who cared about me, and my stepdad was a pretty nice guy, so it's not like I hated him either. I was really little and very confused about whether I should be okay with my mom in spite of the fact that she had cheated on my dad. But after a while, I just decided that I would do whatever made me happy. And having a good relationship with my mother made me happy. And I'm glad that I put in the time and effort to build a good relationship with her and spend time with her, because we ended up losing her to the big C about 6 years ago. I'm very grateful for all the time that we got to spend together. And regardless of what happened in her marriage, she was always a good mother to me, and that's what matters. Even in her last few days, my brother was hardly there, but at least he bothered to visit her a couple of times, so I guess that brought her some peace before she finally passed away. A couple of months after her passing, my stepdad left the state, but we have kept in touch. About a year after my mom passed away, my brother got a job offer that would require him to relocate to London, and he took it up. He lives there now and comes back once a year to visit our father for a couple of weeks, which is why he is here right now. My brother and I no longer speak, but after my mom's passing and my brother leaving, my dad and I had actually started improving our relationship. He apologized to me for being cold to me after he found out about my mother's affair, because he just felt betrayed and hurt about a lot of things and ended up behaving in ways that he was not proud of, especially with me. He acknowledged the fact that he had always paid more attention to my brother but not me, and that's why we had such a strained and difficult relationship, but he said that he wanted to work on it, and that's what we did. So, for the past couple of years, we actually had been getting along well, which I didn't even think was possible. I thought that things had finally started changing, which is why I had asked him to walk me down the aisle on the day of my wedding, and he had agreed. I knew for a fact that he was still really attached to my brother, but I didn't have a problem with that as long as he continued to treat me well, like a daughter that he loved. However, after what happened recently, I realized that he would never truly treat me like a priority as long as my brother was here, and the only reason he had even bothered to try and fix our relationship was because my brother had left for London and would only be here for a couple of weeks every year, so I was important to him but only for as long as my brother was not around. Things really hadn't changed as much as I had believed, and this recent incident was a harsh wake-up call, because I could hardly believe that my dad was asking me to reschedule my wedding in favor of a camping trip with his son. So I did the only thing that occurred to me at the time. I agreed to delay my wedding in the heat of the moment, and minutes after I had disconnected the call with my dad, I was on another call, but this time it was with my stepdad, and I was asking him to walk me down the aisle. Before I even knew it, I was furious at the time, and I'll admit that what I had done was pretty vindictive and was done purely with a spirit of revenge, but while I was doing it, I thought I was doing the right thing for myself so I could teach my father a lesson. My stepdad had been invited to the wedding as a guest anyway, since I had already mentioned that he was a nice guy, and I didn't have a problem with him. Besides, he was the only person who got me through my mom's funeral. So even though we don't talk on a regular basis, we are still close enough. When I asked him to walk me down the aisle, he seemed skeptical about it for a couple of seconds at first, since he was aware of the fact that my father was also going to be there, but I got him to agree eventually. I really didn't think much of it because I thought that even though what I was doing was petty, it was well-deserved, and my fiancé agreed with me, so that was all the validation that I needed. For the past week, my dad had hardly even bothered to keep in touch, and I knew it was because my brother was back in town, which just added fuel to the fire. And then yesterday, I finally got married, and my dad was not there, which was expected. I had been waiting until the very last moment for some sort of miracle, and then maybe he would show up, but that never ended up happening, and my stepdad walked me down the aisle. Don't get me wrong, I'm happy about that, and it was my wedding day, so I'm obviously very happy about how it turned out in general. The only thing that went wrong was that after I sent my dad a picture of me being walked down the aisle by my stepdad, I expected him to be mad, but I hadn't expected him to actually get on the next bus and come back home so he could speak to me. But that's what happened, and I feel bad about everything that took place last evening. I had asked one of my cousins to take a picture of me from my phone while I was walking down the aisle and send it to my dad, and she did. He saw it a couple of hours after that, and then there was no response, which I thought was a bit weird, but I was busy with the wedding lunch and stuff, so I didn't pay much mind to it. And then around 8:00-ish in the evening, when the guests had started to leave, my dad finally showed up. My brother was also there with him, and both of them seemed exhausted, but it was only my dad who did all the talking and told me that he was really sorry for not taking my wedding seriously. But now that he was back, he wanted me to have another ceremony the next day so he could be there for me and finally walk his little girl down the aisle. He told me that he was aware of the fact that he had really been very disrespectful of me by choosing to go on the camping trip and asking me to reschedule my wedding, and I was totally justified in doing what I did, but he really regretted all of it and he just wanted one more chance. He told me that he didn't even care if nobody attended. He just wanted another ceremony so he could at least have the satisfaction of knowing that he had gotten the opportunity to walk me down the aisle, and he seemed pretty desperate for another chance, which made me kind of upset because I realized that maybe if I hadn't asked my stepdad to walk me down the aisle, I don't think my dad would have cared this much. I actually went ahead and asked him if he would have come back so quickly and behaved the same way if I hadn't asked my stepdad to step into his shoes and walk me down the aisle, or if he wouldn't have cared, and it seemed to make him think for a bit, and that was all that I needed to see. It was obvious that this was more about him versus my stepdad rather than him caring about me, and I told him that he had really disappointed me, and I was not going to have another wedding just for his sake. He had his chance, and he blew it, and now I just wanted some peace and quiet away from him. Then I politely asked him to leave, but he just ended up breaking down and kept asking me to forgive him. He was crying, and he told me that he was really sorry for not prioritizing me. He said that he just hadn't realized that I was actually going to go through with the wedding, and as soon as he saw those pictures that I had sent, he and my brother took the next bus back home. But when I maintained that I just wanted him to leave because I wanted to enjoy the day of my wedding to the fullest, he got kind of offended and told me that I was being heartless and I couldn't just treat him like this over one mistake. At that point, I got really annoyed and I told him that if he could treat me badly throughout my life in spite of not having a valid reason, then I had the right to do this to him, especially because he had given me more than several reasons by now, and everything that was happening to him right now, he totally deserved it. I told him that I wanted him to go away and that I was glad that I had asked my stepdad to walk me down the aisle because even though he was not related to me by blood, at least he cared about me, and it wasn't just for show like it was with him. Then I walked inside the house while he continued to cry, and after a while, when I looked out, my brother and my dad were gone. Now that it has been a considerable amount of time since that happened, I feel kind of bad about what I said. I feel even worse that I made him cry. I did for asking my stepdad to walk me down the aisle instead of my father, and then trying to make him feel bad about it. Update 1. Hey everyone, so I've thought about it long and hard, and I have decided that I have nothing to be sorry for. After all, it was my dad's decision to have me reschedule my wedding, so he could go on some stupid camping trip with his son, and I have made excuses for him all my life. I'm sick of doing that now. There is just no excuse for this kind of behavior, and I don't have to forgive him if I don't want to. I do feel bad about making him cry, but honestly, there is only a certain level of mistreatment that people can tolerate, and beyond that, I think they are in the right to make that other person cry. Throughout my childhood and teenage years, there have been several times when I have cried because of how he has treated me, and I've never let anybody find out about it, not even him, and I highly doubt that he would fix anything even if he knew. So, I'm pretty content with my decision of not reaching back out to him again. I have spoken to my husband about it, and he thinks that I've made the right call, and the only reason he hadn't said anything so far was because he did not want to influence my decision. He wanted it to be mine and only mine, and I even discussed it with my stepdad because I felt like I was betraying him a bit by using him for revenge on my dad, so I felt like I owed him a bit of an apology. But he told me that it didn't matter because at least he knew that after my biological father, he was the first person that I thought of, and I guess that's true. Besides, I really do value him, and both he and I are aware of that, so that's all good. And for everyone in the comments who were upset with me for using my stepdad, I guess it's clear that he doesn't mind, and as long as he doesn't seem offended, I'm fine with what I did. Anyway, it's been a couple of days since my wedding, and my dad has tried to text me several times and has been calling me at least once a day, but I haven't responded. I haven't even opened his texts, so I don't even know what he's trying to say to me, and I really don't want to find out. I'm going on my honeymoon in a couple of days, and I want to keep my mind off of these things for a while now. Update 2. So, my husband and I are leaving for our honeymoon tomorrow, and today, when my dad called me in the morning, I let it ring. But then a couple of minutes later, I decided to go through the messages that he had sent me so far. I think I already mentioned in my last post that he had been calling me every single day ever since the day of my wedding without fail. The timings would differ, but he would call. I hadn't gone through his messages so far, but today I finally did, and all of them were just the same. They were worded differently, but the message was just that he was sorry about everything and that he really wanted to fix things. He told me that he really valued me and he knew that he had not been the best father so far, but he just wanted one more chance to fix things. He also acknowledged the fact that I had been right to be upset with him because I had actually given him a lot of chances to fix his behavior so far, but he had always been biased towards my brother, and he knew that I was upset. But as my only surviving biological parent, he really wanted to be a part of my life, and he said that he was ready to do whatever it took to get me to forgive him. I felt really sad reading those messages because the situation itself was just so upsetting, but I had made up my mind that I needed some space away from him, and so after reading those messages, I decided to call him back. He picked up almost instantly and started apologizing, but I told him that I was only calling to tell him that I was going on my honeymoon and I wanted him to stop calling and texting for a while. I told him that I had read his messages and I knew that he was sorry, but I needed him to cut it out for a while because constantly apologizing was not going to change whatever had already happened. It was only going to keep everything fresh in my mind, and I did not want that. So I told him that when I was ready to talk to him, I would contact him myself, but for now, I wanted him to stop trying to contact me. If he was upset about what I had said, he did not let it come through in his voice, and he just told me that he could understand, and he would wait for me to contact him again. So that was that, and now I really just can't wait for the honeymoon so that I can take my mind off of all this drama. Update 3. Hi, so I'm currently on the 3rd day of my honeymoon, and my father has been successful in sticking to his promises so far. He hasn't tried to contact me even once, but surprisingly, somebody else did get in touch with me today, and it was totally unwanted and unnecessary. I'm referring to my brother, who called me up this morning to lecture me about the importance of family and tell me that the way I was treating my father was horrible. So I needed to apologize to him as soon as possible. He had called from a burner phone, so I did not even recognize the number, and when I answered the phone call and I heard him on the other end, I was about to hang up, but then he told me that he knew that I wanted to hang up, but if I did, it would just prove his point that I was an escapist. And I don't know why, but it worked because he just knows how to push my buttons, I guess. Anyway, I ended up staying, and he told me that I couldn't just run away from the family that I had, and whether I liked it or not, my dad was going to be my dad, and my stepdad could never replace him. I don't know why he felt the need to say that to me. It's not like we are in school right now and are back to the stage where we were picking sides during the divorce. So I told him that he needed to stay out of this because this was between my father and me, and he told me that because of my hurtful behavior, my dad had been miserable and even the camping trip had been cut short because of which his visit had been ruined. So this was between all of us. And then he told me that he knew for a fact that I was always jealous of him, and he couldn't do anything about it, but I couldn't just take it out on our father because it was not his fault that he wanted to prioritize the child who had actually always been there for him, unlike me who had betrayed him during the divorce. I was stunned by how childish and idiotic he sounded, but I told him that this sort of behavior was expected from a man-child like him. I also clarified to him that I was not jealous of him in the slightest. I actually pitied him because even though he was doing well in his career, he was still emotionally stunted, and no matter what he achieved, he was still going to be miserable and dislikable. He was about to argue, but before he could say anything, I cut him off, and I told him that if he argued, it would just prove my point that he was miserable and he was desperate to prove that he wasn't. And then I disconnected the call before he could say anything, which was pretty satisfying in its own way. I shouldn't have spoken to him at all, but well, at least I got back at him. I've also decided that for the rest of the trip, I'm just not going to be answering any calls unless it's an emergency or something. Update 4. So I recently came back home after my honeymoon a couple of days ago, and we were still on vacation mode for a couple of days, but yesterday my husband had to go back to work and so did I. And now that we are settling back into our old lives, I decided that it was time to confront my father and talk to him. So after work today, I went over to his place, and he seemed quite surprised to see me there. Of course, my brother was also there, but I just ignored him because he's not very important to me. I also asked to speak to my dad in private because I did not want to have any conversation in front of my brother because I was sure that he would find it impossible to stay quiet and would try to keep interrupting, and I did not have the patience for that. He did not seem very happy about it, but had to agree to go back to his room so my dad and I could speak in private. Once we were by ourselves, I told my father that I was very disappointed in his behavior because I had thought that things were finally getting better with us. For the past couple of years, we have been getting along well, and that's why I had asked him to walk me down the aisle. But when he asked me to reschedule, I knew where his priorities were, and it was a bit petty and vindictive of me to ask my stepdad, but then he is important to me as well, just in a different way. I told my dad that I still didn't know if he had shown up that day because it was my stepdad walking me down the aisle instead of him and he felt competitive or whatever, or if it was because he actually regretted missing my wedding regardless of who was walking me down the aisle. I told him that it really didn't matter at this point because whatever had happened, we couldn't change it. He seemed very upset up until that point, but then I told him that the only way we could deal with this was by starting again. I know people would want me to cut him out of my life forever, but realistically that's not possible, and neither do I want to do that. As somebody who lost her mother to cancer, I know how cruel life can be and how quickly people can be taken away from you. And regardless of how he has behaved in the past or even recently, I've had some good times with my father and I can't disregard all of that, but I also can't disregard the bad times. So I had to come to a place of acceptance, and I told my father that from this point onwards, I would be willing to give him a shot to fix everything that he had messed up. But for now, I wanted him to keep his distance. I explained to him that I needed some time to heal, and he had to be willing to give that to me. Maybe it would take some weeks, or maybe it would take some months, or maybe even years, but eventually, when I would feel better about him and our relationship, we could try to make our father-daughter bond work again. Until then, I just wanted to stay low contact. And then I asked him if that was acceptable for him. He just nodded and then asked me if he could hug me before I left. So we hugged, and it was a bit emotional, but I did not let myself cry until I was back in my car. Anyway, that's the decision that we came to, and I guess it works, at least for now it does. Now on to the next story. Story 9. Parents forgot to buy me a ticket to their Hawaii wedding, then told everyone I had COVID. I posted my negative test online and called them out on their lies. I-17F was recently forgotten about on the day of my parents' wedding. My parents have been together for about 25 years, but they never actually got married. That's why when my dad, 50M, proposed to my mother, 49F, on their anniversary, which they have always celebrated on the date my mother found out she was pregnant with my eldest sister. Even though they were already together before, everyone, including me, was elated and celebrated the occasion with great joy. This happened all the way back in February. They immediately jumped into wedding planning, deciding very early on a small event in Hawaii with just the closest family and friends for an intimate ceremony. Almost immediately, my mother asked my sister, 25F, to be her maid of honor, and my dad asked my brother, 22M, to be his groomsman. I wasn't surprised or offended by this. My sister had always been a mommy's girl, and they both enjoyed spending time with each other shopping and socializing, so they had a very close bond. The same goes for my father and brother. They always played football together and messed around with cars. My father even trained my brother's team for a while in middle school. That had always left me as the odd one out. I tried to insert myself into my family's hobbies and groups that they had within our home, but was always rebuffed. Maybe they could sense that my interest in their activities wasn't all that genuine, or maybe they just didn't care. Either way, I was used to being the last and least important member of my family. Mom had sis and dad had bro. My parents had each other, and my two siblings were closer to each other than they ever were to me, leaving me very lonely and isolated in my own home. During the preparation for the wedding, initially it was suggested that I'd be the flower girl, but my sister thought that role would be more appropriate for her daughter, 3F, so that idea was quickly tossed away. Later on, my maternal grandmother suggested that I might read a poem or do a little bit of a speech during the ceremony, but both my parents refused because they wanted the wedding to be low-key, and they didn't think a cheesy and sappy speech would fit their vision, their literal words. I was still okay with all of this, even though it hurt to know I would be the only member of the family to not actually be part of the wedding party or have any role at all on the day. As the day approached, my parents and siblings got more and more caught up in all the wedding planning. I noticed my mom didn't invite me dress shopping and that whenever they would have discussions about the venue or the event, I was left out. So, I decided to see if they would realize that I wasn't being involved at all and kept quiet, waiting for them to ask me something, anything about the wedding, but that never happened. The wedding was set for 3 weeks ago, the end of August. The day before the departure, my mother casually asked if I had my luggage ready because we couldn't be late to the airport. I bluntly told her that I hadn't prepared anything. She got confused for a second and then snapped at me for not being prepared. I then asked her if I even had a ticket, and her face went pale. Yep, they hadn't even bought me a ticket, and I'm not even sure if I had a room or any accommodations once there. Even though I was the only person in my family without unstable income, I work as a part-time babysitter. My parents had bought first-class tickets for my siblings and a couple of other friends who were attending the wedding, but had forgotten me. My mom told me not to make a big deal out of it, and that they could just find me a low-cost ticket last minute from a cheap airline, but I just replied by asking her, "Then what do I even have a dress for the ceremony?" She went with sis to buy hers and all the other female guests months ago, but I wasn't included. That's when my father came in and just told me to suck it up and that I've never been a girly girl, so I could just wear whatever. I got mad at this because, even though I'm not the most feminine girl on the planet, I would have loved to be included in such an important part of my parents' wedding. And it was about the fact that I was excluded from literally everything that had been going on for months. We all got into a fight, with them calling me entitled and accusing me of making myself small intentionally so they would forget me, like that is a valid excuse for ignoring a child. They ended up telling me that if I was going to keep this attitude, I might as well skip the whole thing altogether, to which I responded with a defiant "fine," and went to my room. Next morning, they all left for Hawaii without me. The ceremony was really small, but they all posted loads of pictures on Insta and Facebook about how perfect and magical that whole week was. People realized quickly that I wasn't in any of the photos and asked my parents why, to which they replied that unfortunately, I had caught COVID before the trip and had to stay behind. My blood boiled at this. I don't know why this was the straw that broke the camel's back for me, but it was. I decided to take a COVID test and published a picture of myself holding the negative test and captioned it, "Not sick at all, just forgotten." I tagged everyone that had questioned my absence from the trip and the wedding in the picture and, for good measure, also every person invited to it. I also wrote in the comments about how my parents had literally forgotten about anything to do with me until the day before parting, and how they actually uninvited me. Most people were on my side, and others couldn't believe it and thought there must be something more to the story than what I was saying. But one thing is for certain. I completely ruined my parents' wedding, and their day was overshadowed by my confession. At first, I felt quite satisfied with myself for standing up on my own. But after a barrage of messages from my family calling me every name in the book, and later when they came back, them furiously attacking me for my immature actions and my spoiled behavior, my pride deflated quickly, and I began to feel awful. I hate my family and I hate being in this house, but I'm a minor and can't leave just yet. I do feel like I could have handled the situation better, though, and now I feel so depressed that I'm second-guessing everything I did, from not speaking up before to the way I exposed them. I also feel guilty for the lack of connection between all of my family and me, and maybe I could have done more. So, am I the asshole for ruining my parents' wedding when they forgot about me? Comments where OP has replied. Comment 1, NTA. Can you move in with grandma? Their history of rebuffing you whenever you try to participate with them says this wasn't a one-off. It's like they don't even consider you family. No judge is going to force you back to their house at 17 if you have a place to go. Get your things and your documents and go. OP, hi. Thank you for your comment. I would like to live with my grandma, but I am due to start my classes in college soon. I was able to arrange it for a start later on the school year, and my school is in the same city where we live, but grandma lives in another state, so I would have to drop out to leave. I don't have any other family here, just friends, and I don't want to be an imposition. Comment 2. Does your school have dorm rooms? Is this something you could plan for next semester or finish the semester out and look at transferring to a school near your grandmother? OP. The school has dorms, but I don't qualify for financial aid, and I don't know how much they cost. Apparently a lot, since I have a friend that's going to go to the same college as me, and she just rented a studio near campus that seems to be a better deal, according to her. And the plan had been for me to stay at home during my studies. OP. My grandma was not able to attend the actual wedding. She lives in another state, and traveling is very difficult for her due to mobility issues. So we only see her when we go to my mom's hometown. I know she saw my FB post and called me to ask how I was doing, but I put on a brave face for her, and I haven't called her since, but we text. I don't know if she knows more of the context of what happened or if my parents have told her a different version of the story, but she is very sweet to me and has always called out my parents for their favoritism. I just feel exhausted lately from everything, and the last thing I want is to bother her, so I haven't called her again since, barely after the wedding. To a different commenter. No, my extended family wasn't there. My grandma has a hard time traveling, and my uncles live in the same town as her, and they weren't invited. When I said they bought tickets for the family, I meant my siblings, their significant others, and my niece. They also took a couple of friends each with their partners. In total, I think it was 13 people. Comment 3. At a certain point, it just feels intentional. Did you ever learn what motivated your family to ignore you? I feel like I could use some insights here, and you have experience with this. OP. I have no idea, other than the fact that they are very close-knit between themselves and I don't seem to fit in. I've never liked the same hobbies and activities as them. I'm quite an introvert and like being at home watching movies or reading a book. Meanwhile, both of my parents love to be the life of the party and host events at our home often for their friends, and my siblings also enjoy these events. When I was a kid, I was more shy and always hid in my bedroom or the basement to avoid people. But as I grew up, I started participating more in these parties, but my parents don't seem to care. That is the only explanation I can find for their behavior, but I still feel like it's not enough. Update 1. September 15th, 2024. Hi everyone. I wanted to write an update earlier, but I'm still kind of a mess at the moment. But I figured since my post had such an overwhelming response and so many people commented and sent me messages that I should write about the latest developments. First of all, let me start by thanking all that commented on my post and shared their own experiences or points of view on my situation. Thank you so much. A few days ago, I could barely find the energy to get out of bed, and my family's comments had made me really believe that I was guilty for all that had passed. But after seeing the responses to my post and all the support you guys were giving me, I felt somewhat reaffirmed in my actions and feelings towards my family. I'm still fighting the feelings of guilt and depression, but whenever I start to spiral, I think on how much this community of strangers has had my back, and I try to calm myself down with your words. Thanks to your input and advice, I finally decided to call my grandma and tell her the full story. Just to clarify a point before going on. I said this in the comments, but I feel like I should put it here also. My grandma, 77F, did not attend the wedding. She lives several states away and has mobility issues, so she doesn't travel anymore. We went to visit her around Easter, and that's when she commented that I might read a poem at the ceremony. But that was the last time I saw her in person before all this. She's always been very loving to me and has called out my parents in the past for their favoritism. But it's hard for her to play a more active role in my upbringing since she lives so far, and I am always worried about bothering her due to her age and health condition. She had a minor stroke a few years back and is now back to normal, but I still worry. Anyway, I called her and laid out everything that had happened with the wedding and how my parents didn't even buy me a ticket to go with them. She came to the same conclusion that most commenters did when I told her that it was simply impossible that they had forgotten and that they did it on purpose. I cried on the phone with her, laying out how I was feeling, how this has been going on forever, how I feel in the aftermath, and most importantly, about my need to get out. She was extremely sweet and comforting to me and told me that I had nothing else to worry about because she had my back 100% and told me to take it easy but make plans for my future and that she'd help me. After that conversation, which lasted about 2 hours, I felt better, and I decided to listen to her and start moving to figure something out for the next school year. I have a friend who is going to lease a studio next to our future campus. She has a great relationship with her parents, but she has 5 younger siblings and wants to be more independent, so that's why she decided to move out. I asked her if I could move in with her temporarily and that I would pay her rent as soon as I got a job. She immediately accepted and told me not to worry about rent or anything else until I was in a better position. And we had a good cry together when I told her all about my parents' wedding incident. So, this all happened a couple of days ago, and I was planning on doing the update then, but my grandma called my parents and my siblings to lecture them about how they were treating me. My brother just sent me a text afterwards with a half-hearted apology, saying that he didn't know I wasn't included and that he just thought I wouldn't have fun on the trip, and then I posted the pic just to create drama. My sister, on the other hand, berated me and told me that I kept trying to make public my own problems and pinning them on my family when they are all innocent. It has been weird with my parents ever since they came back from the trip, and at first, they berated me and were furious with me, and after that we've just been ignoring each other. After my grandma called them, they came into my room, telling me that if I wanted to put this whole issue to rest, I should shut up about it and that this could all have already blown over if only I had kept my mouth shut. I just asked them to leave my room, and then I called my grandma again to tell her what had gone down. She then told me that she and my uncle had bought plane tickets to come down to see me. This was something that I was actually scared about because my grandma's health is not the best, and this kind of effort is a lot for her, and I know how complicated it is for her to get on a plane. So, I tried to dissuade her from coming and told her everything would be okay, but she wouldn't listen and told me that she was long overdue a conversation with my parents and that she wanted to see me. I'm stressed for her, and I feel again like I forced her to take a long, uncomfortable trip because of me, and that maybe I should have dealt with this myself. I do want to see her, and I wish for nothing more than to hug her right now, but I'm worried about her. At least my uncle, Mom's older brother, is coming with her, but I hope she doesn't exhaust herself or nothing happens to her, because that would break me. They arrive tomorrow and have not informed my parents of their trip. My grandma asked me to keep it until she gets here. I hope she is able to make my parents see the mistake in their actions, or at the very least help me break the news to them that I'm moving out very soon and I plan on being no contact with them. I don't know. I'm worried about her having to do so much for me and bothering her, but I also appreciate and love her so much for doing all this for me. Update 2. September 19th, 2024. Hello. Sorry for not having re-updated sooner or commented. As you can imagine, if you've seen my last posts, it's been a busy week, to say the least. There's been a lot of people messaging me and commenting on the post, and I haven't had time to answer to no one until today, and I'm sorry for that. You all have been so helpful and caring for me in my story, and it's been truly eye-opening and terrifying to see how many people have gone through similar stories of neglect and abuse. And I just want to thank you all for taking time out of your day to send some kind words to this internet stranger. This update will be long, so sorry about that. I'm just going to continue where I left off. So, my grandma called me to tell me she was coming here to see me and help me out. I was very stressed about it because my grandma has a very hard time traveling, so for her to take this trip meant that she would be under enormous stress, and I felt responsible for her since I was the one that called her. She arrived early Monday morning with my uncle, and I went to get her at the airport. NGL, it was a very intense and emotional moment, and as soon as I saw her, I ran to her arms and broke down sobbing. I don't even know if I was able to tell her anything at that moment because of how hard I was crying, and I had so many things to say. Thank you for coming, for being so good to me, for having my back. I'm sorry to have made you take this trip. I feel awful at home. I don't know if my parents love me, but I know you do. Am I an affair child? I truly was hit with all of this, plus the guilt and the anxiety, all at once when I saw her. But she held me tight in her arms, telling me everything was going to be okay. My uncle hugged us as well. I don't know how long we stayed like this, but it must have been a while until my uncle told me we should get going. We grabbed a cab and went to their hotel. My grandma had teary eyes, and I could feel her breathing heavily, which scared me, but she kept hugging me and smiling all the way. She had reserved a double room so I could stay with her for these days, and once they were settled in and I was more calm, we sat down and I poured everything out for them. The years of neglect and the emotional abuse, how I was feeling miserable after the trip, but also for years now, how my parents have been trying to make me feel guilty for all of this that has happened, how I was scared about my future, but my number one priority at the moment now was to move out of that house, even at the expense of my schoolwork, how I have made arrangements to move in with my friend and I was looking for a job, and I told them about this post and how some people thought I might be an affair child and that I was beginning to question that as well. It was a lot, and I could tell they were both really affected by what I was saying, but they kept comforting me and making me feel safe to open up to them. After I unloaded all my concerns with them, my grandma reassured me that I had nothing to worry about anymore and that she would be here for me always. First of all, she reassured me that I was not an affair child and that both my parents were thrilled when my mother got pregnant with me, and that she knew the ultimate deal breaker for my mom was cheating, and she believed it was the same for my father. Apparently, the favoritism began showing when I was around 3 to 4 years old, when my parents were constantly complaining about having a young kid in the house, and they were bothered because they could take my older siblings to their stuff but not me, and I was also very shy and a bit of a crybaby, which they had no patience with and made me very different from my siblings. She told me that she knew that my parents had saved more than enough for my college, they're really well off, so that it had never been a concern for me until now, thinking they might pull the funds away from me for my education, but that if they tried to not pay for my schooling, she would take care of it and that she just wouldn't let me drop out because of money concerns. She also told me she would help me with rent and an allowance to move out. She was very generous, and I thanked her for it all, but I also told her that this experience had been eye-opening in the sense that I never realized how privileged I had been economically all my life. For all their faults, my parents have pampered me money-wise all my life. I went to private school, I have a rather large monthly allowance, I've had a card for years now, and they have never objected to any of my expenses. Seeing the stories here, I realized how good I've had it so far and how being dependent on them all my life made me so exposed to losing everything. And I want to be independent now, not just from my parents, but from everyone. I feel like I need to learn to stand up on my own. Writing this and having just read all the stories of people in truly awful situations makes me feel like I've been a spoiled brat all my life. TBH. She insisted on me accepting my help until I don't need it anymore, and I accepted that, but I'll still look for a job and try to make it out on my own. We relaxed for a while in the hotel because we were all exhausted from the morning, but in the afternoon we grabbed a cab and went to my house. My parents were extremely surprised to see my grandma and uncle with me when I entered the door, but before they could say anything, my grandma told me to go pack all my essentials while they talked to them. I rushed upstairs, and I could hear my grandma and uncle berating my parents for all that they had put me through. At first, I also heard my parents trying to defend themselves, but eventually, they quieted down. When I came downstairs with 2 suitcases and my backpack full to the brim with everything important that I had in my room, they were all in the living room. My father was beet red, and my mother was sobbing like a child, and when she saw me, she extended her arms in my direction, saying she was sorry. But I just said, "Save it," with the coldest tone I could muster, and my dad said that I didn't have to be a jerk, to which both my uncle and grandma told him to shut up. I left the house at that moment and waited for the cab outside. In the hotel, my grandma reassured me that I wouldn't have to go back to them and that they told her my college tuition was never in question for them and that they had planned to throw me an extravagant birthday party to make up for the wedding mess and were going to be giving me a car as an apology for everything. But my grandma was having none of that BS because it was pretty obvious to her that they were only trying to save face and they were coming up with these things on the fly, and that a party and a car would not make up for all that they have put me through. Apparently, the moment that broke my mother was when she told her that I had even questioned my paternity, and she started crying then. But my grandma told her that what else could they expect when they had excluded me repeatedly from all family events since I was a child. She told me that she would make sure they made the payments to my school unless I preferred to completely cut ties with them and have her pay until I can pay myself, and I asked her to do that. I felt bad because I feel like it's not her responsibility, but I truly don't want anything else from my parents anymore. And although my grandma is pretty well off herself, she's not as wealthy as my parents, but she reassured me that everything is all right and that everything going to me would be taken away from my mom's inheritance. So, the next day we went with my friend, her parents, and grandma to the studio where we were planning to move, and immediately upon arriving, my grandma said, "Absolutely not." I knew from pictures that the studio was very small and dirty, but we saw water damage and mold in the bathroom and kitchenette, and there was also rust in the little old appliances. I knew all of this beforehand, but I figured I could live with that at least for a while. But the thing that the adults pointed out that actually made me and my friend change our minds was the fact that this studio was street level in a bad neighborhood in a building that didn't seem particularly safe and had bullet holes on the walls, which I didn't even know what those were until my friend's dad pointed it out. So, Grandma and my friend's parents said they would look for an apartment for us in a better location, and they'd help cover the costs. Both my friend and I want to be independent, but we realize that with our most likely minimum wage jobs in such a high-demand area, we won't be able to find anything better on our own. So, the plan is we're going to look for a 2-bedroom apartment, and me and my friend are going to pay what we had previously planned for the studio, and her parents and my grandma will cover the difference. I know it's still quite spoiled of me to expect that help from my grandma, but after seeing the studio in person, I truly wouldn't have felt safe there. My friend's parents, who were somewhat aware of what I was going through, told me that I could move in with them until we find a nice apartment, to which I'm extremely grateful since Grandma is going back in a couple of days, and I've been staying in the hotel with her ever since. Apparently, my friend, her parents, and my grandma spoke about this before coming to me to make sure I had some safe place to stay until we move into the apartment, which is still to be found. I teared up a little as I thanked them, seeing how people were rallying behind me to offer help. Since then, I've been moving some of the stuff I had left at my parents' and setting my space at my friends'. My mom keeps crying and apologizing every time I go back, and even my father has said sorry, but I remain distant and cold towards them. My sister called and said that our mother was a mess and that I was a dick for what I had done. But before she could say anything else, I hung up the phone and blocked her. I was going to block my brother as well when I saw that he had sent me a very long message apologizing again and again for all that he has done to me and for not realizing our parents were treating me so poorly. He says he's been doing a lot of self-reflection on the day since Grandma called and realized that he had been in the wrong for assuming I wasn't on the trip because I wouldn't want to go and for just allowing my parents to exclude me for all those years. I sent a brief reply thanking him for his words but telling him I need space and I was not ready to accept his apology. I feel like he might be genuine because he has never been nasty to me the way my sister has, just aloof towards me. But I also feel like I need to keep him away for the moment. Also, keeping a bridge up with my family feels like the right thing to do right now that everything is so fresh. Maybe in the future, he will show me he's just as nasty as everyone else, and I'd block him, but as long as he respects my boundaries, I feel better not cutting him off completely. I've also made an appointment with a therapist who specializes in neglected teens, and I have my first preliminary visit next week, again funded by my grandma, which makes me feel ever more eager to find a job ASAP to take the burden off of her. Even as she tells me time and time again she is happy to do all of this for me. That's where things stand right now. I don't know if I'll update again, maybe when I start classes or move to the apartment, but right now, I'm just trying to enjoy some time with my grandma and my uncle and learn to grow and get rid of these feelings of guilt and depression that have been plaguing me for so long. I want to thank once again all of this community for being so nice and helpful to me, and all of you who have messaged me with your own personal stories of getting kicked out or having to learn how to make it on your own at a too early age. You've helped me feel a lot less alone and made me realize that things can get better if I work hard for it. I feel kind of spoiled for having such an amazing support system in my grandma, uncles, and my friend, but you all guys are right. Reaching out has been the absolute best decision I could have taken, and opening up about my feelings to those who love me and to all of you internet friends has absolutely saved me. So, thank you, really. I'm more grateful than words can ever tell. Comments where OP has replied. Comment 1. I'm curious. When you've gone back to collect things, what exactly have your parents been saying? OP. My mother has been crying every time I've gone there and just saying, I'm sorry, over and over again. But I haven't had a conversation with her, so she hasn't mentioned specifics. But I also haven't given her a chance. My father has been mostly silent, staring at me whenever I come and go. But when he apologized, it was more along the lines of, I'm sorry for everything, than bringing any wrongdoing for his part on anything. I don't know if they are shocked right now by everything that's happening. I myself feel overwhelmed and haven't had time to process. Or if they don't think they've done anything wrong and are just acting for grandma. I don't know myself, so I can't really answer. Comment 2. Don't cut off your nose to spite your face in terms of college money. Your parents need to foot that bill in full. Don't hamper yourself with that expense when they can afford it. It is the very least they can do. OP. My grandma has already told me that it's unacceptable for me not to go to college if the reason is that my parents won't pay, and she won't allow me to get a student loan either. I asked if she would co-sign, and she flat out told me no, that she would pay herself rather than see me stressed about the financial aspect of it. I won't jeopardize my education for my parents, but since I have this option to have my grandma pay, that's what I'll do, because I'd rather this money not come from my parents. Knowing them, they would dangle this fact for the rest of my life like I owed them. I'm very lucky that my grandma will take care of this. I feel like I don't deserve her. Comment 3. I hope you aren't feeling guilty for coming from a well-off family. You're not spoiled. You seem more self-aware than a lot of people with your same background. Working and living a life independent of your family will open up the world to you. I truly don't think you're a spoiled rich kid. Working for the things we need, and one can create character and teach us so many things, i.e., how to handle difficult people and situations professionally, the value of each hour and dollar earned, teamwork, societal structures, and so on. I'm glad you have a safety net with your grandma and don't listen to anyone who would degrade you for that. A lot of us are living hand to mouth and paycheck to paycheck, and I absolutely do not wish that on someone just starting out in life. If you ever want to update about how things are, I'm definitely going to read it. Thank you for sharing a very difficult time in your life. OP. I do feel more than guilty, angry about my background and how blind I've been all my life to all my privileges. This self-awareness that you are talking about, I have discovered in the last couple of weeks because when I first fought with my parents, I barely thought about money or how I would sustain myself. That's always been a given for me, which I guess is nice considering I'm not yet 18. But after posting here and seeing messages of people who have had to struggle so much with the financial repercussions of being neglected or cutting out your family or going out to the world at a very young age, made me realize how out of touch with reality I was. I'm angry for all the other Redditors who haven't had the same privileges that I did, and I'm angry at myself for being so carefree about money and privileges that I feel most people don't have. I want to be self-aware to 1, thank the people who are helping me and appreciate what they're giving me, and 2, in the future, I want to be independent and also aware of how hard it is for other people who didn't grow up in a 5-bed house in an expensive neighborhood with private school and all the other gifts I've been given. Now on to the next story. Story 10. My M. 50, wife F. 48. Abandoned me 2 months ago to find herself. My wife Mary's family has a history of dementia, developing memory issues in their mid to late 50s. Her mom, grandmother, and several other relatives on her mom's side have developed dementia. Her mom lived with us for 4 years until earlier this year. Father is dead. Our kids are independent and out of the house. Oldest is in her last semester of college, the younger enlisted. The last 4 years were tough on us, our kids. Daughter moved for college but moved back for a bit during COVID. And our marriage. Living with someone with dementia is brutal. We had talked a lot the last year about taking the remaining college funds, our regular savings, sell or rent the house. We were ready to downsize anyway. Quit our jobs and travel for a year or until the money runs out. We just had to wait for her mom to move into a home. I understand her anxiety about developing dementia, and I was burned out. You live through COVID, working remote, a wife working remote, a college and high school student taking remote classes, and a MIL with dementia, and see how you hold up. Space finally opened up and we were able to move her mom into a care facility. I finally thought I had a chance to breathe. When we moved Mary's mom out, Mary's mental health took a huge downward spiral. I went from caring for her mom to caring for her. She felt guilty about putting her mom in a home and had lots of anxiety about developing dementia. Our plan was to start our traveling summer 2024. 2 months ago, I get home and she's left a note. My friends call it Exhibit A. Basically, she was going on her trip without me. She had quit her job, took most of the savings, and wasn't sure when she'd be back. Maybe a year, maybe sooner. She knew I'd understand. Her location is turned off and my calls go directly to VM. I texted the kids a picture of the note. We have our own checking accounts for direct deposits of our paychecks, but we transfer most into a joint account to pay the household bills and savings. We both had access to the main savings account. We have joint credit cards we use for household expenses. The 2 cars and mortgage are joint. We both also have our own small savings accounts, our own retirement accounts, equally funded, and our own credit cards for gifts and fun things. I closed all joint cards and accounts. I waited a month to see if she'd come back, hopefully before she spent our savings. After receiving only 1 text the first month, I went to a lawyer. She basically said there was very little to do right now other than change the beneficiaries of my retirement accounts and life insurance. Yay, my wife gets nothing else if I die alone while she's having her adventures. It was only a month and there was no way to serve her papers. My lawyer advised me to keep paying the mortgage and the cars. The cost of trying to get a judge to approve the sale of joint assets was more than making payments. I didn't want to ruin my credit by letting one of our cars get repossessed. But I can't sell it because she's on the title. I get random texts and she sporadically posts on Instagram. Of course, she has comments turned off. I want to block her so bad, but my lawyer advised that it's better to maintain a communication channel that's not through our kids. Her last post was from Hawaii. She put in the comments how great a husband I was for letting her take this trip. I'm barely making it paying 2 cars, a mortgage, household bills, insurance, hoping there are no emergencies because I have no savings, and she's enjoying our trip fare. I'm so pissed at her. I helped take care of her mom for 4 years and her when she fell apart after her mom moved into a memory care home, and she returns the favor by abandoning me. I'll never get to take this trip and have to put off retirement. My only solace is the kids are pissed at her, but they'll probably forgive her eventually. Double F her. I'm no fool, she's hooking up with guys. She looks good. She'll have zero problem getting men. I texted her and asked if she was sleeping around. A week later she responded that she wasn't sure. So I'm drinking alone on a Friday night and she's somewhere, probably on a beach, enjoying life. F her. Edit 2. My lawyer has given me a bunch of advice and options. It was just way more than I could possibly include in this post. I could definitely push the issue harder and I might need to at some point, but all that work is very expensive. Finding her, serving her, getting a judge to sign off, that's not cheap. I'm following up soon and I plan on talking about the savings and my finances. Until I paid all the bills and realized how little was left, it didn't hit me that I had to worry about money. Relevant comments that the OP replied to. Comment 1. Thanking you for letting her take this trip is basically her saying, when I get through living the single life, I'll be coming back to the comfort and security of married life. When she returns, I'd say, welcome home. Here are your walking papers. OP. She 100% is under the delusion that she's coming back to a marriage. She's had a few conversations with our daughter, and she's convinced I'll understand and forgive her. Naive. Comment 2. Tell your daughter to pass along the message that you're filing for divorce for abandonment and see if this gets you some traction. I don't generally like the idea of going through kids, but they need to have your back on this. Maybe even tell her they'll cut her off as well if she keeps doing this to you and the family. Maybe even start posting about how she's living the good life and letting your friends and family know what kind of pickle this has put you in. Everyone probably assumes you're on board if you're not purposefully driving the true narrative. OP. She only hears what she wants. I asked her to send me an address to serve her papers. She only told me that we'll work it out when she comes home. The F we will. My daughter tells her all the pain she's causing, but she just says that she only has 5 to 10 years left until she gets dementia. It's impossible to know if she'll even develop dementia, but shouldn't she be spending this with her family? Update. November 13th, 2023. An update for my original post. I'm feeling much more positive now that the financial situation has become a little more manageable. Basically, I'm running up debt that will get paid off when I sell the house. Even with lawyer fees, I have 6 to 8 more months before I have to worry about money, assuming there are no emergencies. My friend's wife gave me some good advice. Don't go from being a hero to a villain in your kids' eyes. How I talk about and treat my wife will determine my future relationship with my kids. I don't give a damn about my wife, but I don't want to make her a sympathetic figure or drive them away from both of us. I followed up with the lawyer. Basically, she said we're going to have her pay back the savings she took through a reduction in her share of the assets. Any division of assets will include the savings she took. She'll also have to repay the money I spent maintaining the household while she was gone. There is plenty of equity in her share of the house and her retirement plans to cover that. She said that our finances are so intertwined after nearly 25 years of marriage, my wife is going to get some share of the assets. Best case is she agrees to the terms of the divorce and it's relatively cheap and quick. Otherwise, it gets complicated and expensive. She gave me a lot of options and how much I can expect to spend, so I decided to just mostly wait. I got a couple of credit cards with promo rates for purchases and transfer that gives me breathing room and I can conserve cash. I'll just pay them off when I sell the house. Now that my financial situation is less stressful, I'm actually enjoying her being gone. I'm free to do whatever I want, whenever. I don't have to cook or clean or take care of anyone. The house is quiet for the first time I can remember. I loved my wife, but her mental health weighed down our marriage. On balance, it was worth it until now. The first month or so I expected her to be there whenever I'd get home. When someone was at the door or if I heard noises, I'd think it was her. I checked doorbell cam obsessively. I'm not looking forward to her returning. It has to happen, but when she comes back I'll have to deal with her. The divorce, getting the house ready to sell, dividing all our stuff, finding a new place to live. I'm hoping she'll stay away until after New Year's, but my daughter said she thinks her mom will be home for Christmas, either to stay or visit. My lawyer will have papers ready to serve her. Hopefully she'll just agree to the terms and continue her travels. People had some great advice. Renting or selling the house. Not really feasible right now since I'd have to fix some stuff and get it ready to sell/rent. Since I need a place to live, the amount I net each month, rent mortgage plus rent on a new apartment plus storage unit, equals not worth it. My kids' rooms are still full of their stuff and I don't want to spend the time and effort to clear them out and put them in storage. Getting a helic. This was great advice. I didn't realize I didn't need both people to get a loan. If I need more money, I can go this way in the short term. The promo rates on the credit cards were cheaper and easier than getting a helic. Serving my wife divorce papers or getting a divorce in absentia. This is something I might need to do eventually, but the cost in lawyer fees goes up exponentially in cases like this. I'm comfortable just waiting for now. Look at the phone bill to see where she's at. I possibly will. I did look at her usage and did notice that she doesn't post on social media until after she leaves a place. Like when she posted about Hawaii, she made a call that day that originated in Los Angeles. She posted about a cruise and I figured out the dates. Trying to serve her at the port possibly, but it ended a couple of days before she posted. She tried adding international calling to her line, but I blocked it, so she removed her phone from our account. Relevant comments that the OP replied to. Comment 1. Oh my gosh. I'm infuriated on your behalf. The audacity of my husband is so great for letting me take this trip. The petty in me hopes she'll be home for Thanksgiving because I want her world to explode. OP. She's told her family she won't be home for Thanksgiving. Nobody told her my daughter and I are spending Thanksgiving with her family, though. She can see the posts of us having a good time without her. Comment 2. Please change the locks on the house so she can't just waltz back in while you are out one day. I'm so angry for you. I've been married for 23 years and if my husband did this to me, God help anyone between me and him. OP. She left her keys. I changed the code on the security system, the passphrase and password. I also found a new hiding place for the emergency key we had in the backyard. Comment 3. So she's just gonna blow through all the money and then assumes you'll take her back and care for her when dementia hits her. OP. Seems to be her plan, but it's not mine. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.